Tascam.
Let's just start because this is going to be interesting. Okay, state the question again.
It'll be part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for example, I have I use a Tascam 10R, 10L something. I don't know. It's one of these guys, and it records internally.
Yep.
So that wouldn't have an issue with the static, would it? Or is that?
It absolutely could.
Really?
You may not completely. I mean, I have a really expensive $5,000 tube microphone in the studio that is literally gold plated on the outside. And it is super susceptible to any of those type of things.
Yeah.
And so it even a high-end pro microphone is susceptible to it. And if anything, the higher end it is, I've had more issues with cell phones, including the best story I got was a client did the recording at a home studio, put his phone in his pocket on mute, did lead vocals for 10 songs. The studio guy mixed the whole album, sent it to me for mastering. And as I'm mastering and bringing things up, I start hearing some noise, and there's a couple parts where the vocal was by itself. And I'm like, dude, did you have your phone on when you were recording the vocals? Like, what do you mean? It's like, do you hear the ringing? It's like, no. I hear the transmission, and it's all throughout your vocals and all the songs. And it's like, what do you mean? I actually literally had to just cut a sample and send it to him. It's like, you hear that? That is in your vocal recording. That is your cell phone. How did you and the engineer not know? And that that became a whole thing with the client screaming at the engineer, and then him having to go back, redo vocals for all 10 songs and remix them all over again, and then have me do it, because there was no way that you were going to sit down and start editing out and cleaning all that on 10 songs. It's crazy.
Yep. Yeah, you can't Isotope RX that out.
I mean, you could have fun trying, but
you can have fun trying.
Would not have fun with that. No, I don't have time for that. No one has time for that. So
harmonics are so significant in obviously like a sine, like if you have a sine wave coming through there, it'd be fairly easy to just go to that frequency and take a sharp cued EQ and just like dip it out. But when it's actually an audio sound, like in rooms, in space, you have so many different things that are coming into it, harmonics that end up getting into that recording too, not just, well, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Aaron, that might have been through the microphone and into the processing, but because it wasn't like it was coming through a speaker at that particular moment. But yeah, I mean, and then the engineer's probably doing various EQs and compression, so it might be adding some different things. If that's running then through a vocal chain, you're going to add harmonics to that sound.
Yes.
So then trying to pull that out later is trying to be very creative with you're not going to be able to. It makes me sick trying to think about it,
Exactly. And then, it's just not good. And I mean, I hate to be that guy when talking about other engineers and stuff like that. But I mean, your one job is to listen and gauge quality of what's happening in your workflow. And if you can't hear, I mean, if you're mixing, at some point you're soloing the voice in your EQ.
You better hope.
Yes, exactly. So
I was going to say, it sounds like they didn't solo it up. They just listened to it in the mix and called it good.
Yeah. And lesson learned on that. And then anytime I have a client go into the room, I tell him, put it on airplane. And he's like, why? No, it's muted already. No. You put it on airplane mode. because it's going to be a problem. And
leave it out in the lobby, man.
Yes, I have a lot of especially hip hop clients that write their lyrics on their phone. So they're holding the phone next to the microphone as they're rapping and they're reading the lyrics. So it's even a bigger concern that anything, even if it's muted, the vibrations will get picked up loudly by that microphone.
Yeah, the proximity is going to definitely also add, and like I have a set of studio monitors, right? And I was actually doing some work on this setup right before, last night, and just having my phone near the speaker, and the speaker's balanced, right? It's it's a professional monitor, but even the circuitry inside of it can there's unbalanced parts. There's places where it's not canceling noise and so forth. So it may not necessarily be the cable that adds the noise. It could absolutely be just the guts of the microphone, guts of the speaker. And speakers are fun. Like take your phone and go just get closer to a set of studio monitors, and you'll hear that like tick, 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 that we're talking about. And it's not something you want in your vocal pass, that's for sure.
So is airplane mode enough for that? It sounds like maybe you should even just turn off your phone completely.
Both. Airplane mode is a great start because that's where it's not going to transmit a wireless signal, and that's what is picking that up. That's what's being transmitted that you obviously can't see, and different strengths and different things in your rooms are going to change how strong that is and stuff like that. But airplane mode is going to cancel that out as far as functionality. I'm a little bit OCD, so I'm more like leaving the control room on airplane mode. A little bit of both.
Yeah, there's a table inside Studio B where I do a lot of these vocal sessions and hip hop sessions. There's a charging station there. Just leave your phone there.
Print your lyrics out.
Yeah.
Print the lyrics out, and we'll put it up for you.
Yeah, we can. I asked them, you just email me the lyrics. We have a printer. I'll go to the office, print it, and then I'll make a copy for myself. And then I can write notes on as you're doing take after take. I can say, okay, this needs to be delivered. Sometimes singers, rappers will try to put too many lyrics and the phrasing, and then they try to be too proper in your writing. So then sometimes I'm just taking prepositions out. I'm using slang and I'm crossing things out so it flows correctly versus being grammatically correct. Because the listener's going to hear it and their brain's going to interpret the message. It doesn't need to be done perfectly grammatically correct. But taking two syllables out of a line completely changes the flow, the breathing, and even how well the pitch gets executed on it.
Changes the musicality of it all.
Yeah. So all that is important for it. So let's kind of start. Let me see. We're 150. Oh, there we go.
Hey, you got another one.
Oh, Malia's here. Hi, Malia. I can't hear you yet.
Not yet.
Are you in Orlando?
Muted.
Oh, she's just going for a drive. Say hi, Malia.
Hi, Malia.
I still can't hear you.
You're muted, Malia.
Oh, I said hi. Aaron, I'm on campus. Am I able to come over?
Yeah, come in. Come on and hang out. I'm by myself here right now.
Oh, I see you. Okay. I was like, where are you at? I didn't see you on there. Okay, yeah. I'll come in.
Yeah,
I'm over at HR right now. And I just thought about it. I was like, oh yeah, Aaron's on campus. Like, I'll come join him.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. I'll be there in like 5 minutes then.
Okay, just if you want to just mute your video and leave the audio on so you can hear, because we're going to start the presentation in a minute.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. All right, so Nathan, you haven't taken my audio class yet, right?
No, I have not.
What month are you at?
I'm just wrapping up portfolio 1.
Oh,
So-
okay. So you
that
got a
brand
couple
new?
months, huh?
Is that brand new?
Fairly
No,
new.
so portfolio 1 means he's like month 5 or month 6,
It's around there.
and then there's 7 portfolio classes. So they'll take 2 or 3 classes and then have a portfolio where they develop, they have a month of developing skills that they've learned within those classes. And then they take 2 or 3 more classes and then take another portfolio where they kind of add more material based on what they just learned on the previous classes. So it's great because it gives the students time to breathe and not just throw them with another class. And let's take a month and just be creative and see what you can actually add to your resume portfolio type of scenario.
Cool. Okay. So hopefully I'll also be able to help you out a little bit with that and
Yeah.
some techniques.
So then I ask, because then Ryan and me will set the pace a little bit differently depending on how many students had taken my class and how many hadn't. So we'll get into a couple of little things.
So Jack has?
Some stuff. Jack has. Jack took my class about 2 months ago, and he was definitely one of those students that had a lot of questions, and I even did a couple of separate one-on-ones, and we thought it would be quick, and an hour and a half later, we're still talking about a whole bunch of other things. So
keep that up, man. That's what I did when I was at school. I was at a trade school, so I wanted to get in, get out, and I lived at that place and got the heck out, back into the industry. But yeah, never stop asking those questions.
Yeah, I'm planning on meeting up with you again in the next month or so, Aaron.
Yeah.
I'll be here. I never mind the question. So actually, let's do that. Let's start, Ryan, with you just talking a little bit about your background.
Cool. Has Malia taken your class?
Malia has. Yeah, she
Malia.
just took it last month.
Okay, cool. So everybody's right there.
So we should be good, and then that'll give Malia a little time to get here.
All right, guys. As far as this presentation, I do like to give a disclaimer before I start that, I do want this to be fairly interactive. If you do have some questions, stop us, and otherwise we're on a little bit of a time crunch. Sorry, headphone. Get behind the chair. Got it. All right. But feel free to ask questions, and I'll probably, after going over like a section, I'll open it up for you guys to really, have a chance to ask questions and so forth. So I don't want to leave anybody behind on some of the lingo. I like to. Yeah, let's get that part started, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself and what I like to do. But I'm the U.S. product specialist for Rode microphones, and what that means is I'm the mic geek. I like to lovingly call it the mic geek. I'm just going around the country before COVID, obviously, right, and teaching classes just like this at local camera stores, at local music stores, and then I transitioned into colleges and started picking up a lot more on colleges, and Rode has worked a lot with Rick Beers, who is a Full Sail grad, and I know you guys have had Rick down there quite a bit. He was actually one of our first influencers back before influencer was a thing, and he's created a lot of sound bites for us and all kinds of different things. So he got me in touch with you guys a little bit more. Met one of your professors at a podcasting event, and here we are now, and that's how I met Aaron. And so a lot of connecting, a lot of teaching people about Rode, and not so much about selling Rode. Obviously, you sell Rode by passion and by education, and I'm in that space, but I don't have to actually get any commission sales, which allows me to talk about my competitors, allows me to talk about educational things like how might this compare to a U87, how might this compare to one of the Chinese made video microphones or wireless systems or something like that. And I really like that because that's kind of my passion. I love helping people, and I don't have to worry about, if you buy a Rode microphone or not. So feel free to ask those questions about your stuff. And a little bit about me. I was a live sound engineer at 19 years old as an A2 at my local arena in Kansas City. That's where I'm from. I'm currently based in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which I was brought down here by my missus. My fiance is a medical doctor, and she's got her residency going on down here. So I'm remote from Rode. Rode is locally in the U.S. out in Long Beach, California. So about 6 years ago, I got called by an old coworker and moved out to Long Beach, and then 6 months into that, they moved me back to Kansas City, where I traveled a little more east and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting transition, you know, go get the job, show that you can actually use the stuff, the credit card and things like that, travel for the company. Oh, we need you elsewhere, so go back home. You know, so I moved back home, and I've been there for 5.5 years since. Before that, I was the A2. That became pretty political. Kansas City built a brand new arena, and so they kind of fired all the big shots, and I moved up to A1, but it was kind of like the side arena in the city. So it was kind of like not very exciting. And, you know, I wasn't going to grow as an audio engineer, and I wasn't going to get paid more. And yeah, at the time I was only like 21, 22. So I was there for about 3.5 years, and got to work a lot of cool shows. And I was the guy who ran the signal for the shows. So in the dressing rooms and things like that, I'd set up radio broadcasts or podcasts. Back then, podcast wasn't quite yet as big as it is now, but radio broadcasts. I'd set up sound going into the other rooms, hearing impaired, things like that. And I'd work with the front of house engineers on the shows to make that all go out to the building. And that was really fun. But yeah, it didn't grow personally, so I got the heck out of there. I went to the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences down in Arizona. Don't hate me for that. There was a reason, and that was that they ran an 8-month program. And it was a trade school, straight up. Just you had 3 weeks at a time until you reached 8 months of doing various audio jobs. And since I had experience, that's what I was looking for. It came with a 250-hour internship, and they helped place you. So I got back in the industry with a composer named Klaus Badelt out in LA. And he did Pirates of the Caribbean, if you're familiar with that.
Wow.
And I know, right? I didn't know the guy, you know. Yeah. It's an awesome soundtrack, and he hated it, absolutely hated it, because that's all he ever, people always talk to him about it. You know, and those composers work on that stuff for, you know, a long time, right? And so he was kind of over the Pirates of the Caribbean thing. He was Hans Zimmer's right-hand man for a long time, broke off, did his own thing, got the Pirates gig, and the rest was history, you know. And he worked with four or five other composers in-house, and so I got to know them, meet them a lot. Very quick version. Sorry
to interrupt you. Didn't he also work on Inception?
Not Inception. Not that I know of. I thought Inception was Hans.
No, Inception was another of Hans's, I guess, students. And I thought that, I know the guy who did Inception, and I thought he also did Pirates of the Caribbean. It sounded familiar to me, but maybe
dude, I want to look that up. Like, yeah, absolutely. It was really cool to see that actually, you know, the fallout of that essentially, and the relationship between those composers. To be perfectly honest with you, it's even more competitive than what we do as audio engineers. You know, there's less people doing it, but there's only a few. Like Hans Zimmer owns the market. You know, John Williams owns the market, and they're both hired for exactly what they do. You know, so it was.
So yeah, taking a mentor in that profession, in that field, is very different than taking a intern in as an engineer, as a studio, somebody else, because there's a lot of work to be done. But as a composer, there is at that level, there's so much competition. And I don't know, that engineering, you can always find another band, you can find another event. How many big Hollywood movies are there happening by comparison? Just have a sleep. You see over here. Millie, yes, here. Okay, sorry to interrupt your story. Go ahead.
No, you're okay.
Up now?
I was looking it up right now, and the Inception page shows Hans Zimmer, and Klaus does not have, at least, and I just did the quick version, the Wikipedia. I'd probably need to do Hans's all music.
So I'll have to refresh that. So maybe.
But that's the funny part, is like Hans Zimmer was basically the boss of a ton of composers. I worked for 2 of them actually. And
right, his name's on it. That doesn't mean he did everything.
That's right. Yep. Trevor Morris was one of the first ones but I didn't get to stick with Trevor. Trevor hired 2 interns and he didn't need to. You know, they're kind of busy and they forget that they hired somebody. So I literally cleaned a closet one day, and then my buddy, who was the other intern, was like, "Yeah, man, here's a free lunch, but we don't need you." And I'm like, "I just moved to Los Angeles." But that's the industry that we're in. You know, I don't hold any grudges against Trevor or obviously that roommate. Who's actually my roommate and my classmate over at Crass, but I don't usually lead off with that because it sounds super super negative. But honestly, the reason I got the next job with Klaus was because of who I know, and that leads into the next part of this, which is I worked for Steven Slate Drums. After that, I was working a live sound gig at the Grove in LA, and I took a break before the show started and went over to the Barnes and Noble and was just reading some of the audio magazines and stuff. And this lady is standing there between me and one other dude, and reading some of the audio magazines as well. And she goes, "Does anybody have a camera phone that works?" And so I took a picture of it and sent it to her an email later. Well, we got to talking, and she was Steven Slate's sister. So
Wow.
I know, right? So
That
I knew
was-
nothing about Steven Slate at the time. I come from a live sound background, and Crass didn't have any Slate's product at the time. So I didn't really know who he was, right? And but it's an audio guy. He's on the front of SOS magazine. So I was like, well, I'm going to talk to this lady, see what happens. I emailed her the next day with the picture, and I just professionally wrote, you know, "I am so sorry for this, but I truly believe that so much of what we do is who we know. And Steven's looking for a free intern. I'm currently working on some hours to get my degree, and I'd love to work for him." And got a call from Slate like 2 weeks later and started on Cyber Monday.
Oh,
Worst day of answering phones ever. "Please hold, I'll get you right over to support. Please hold, I'll get you right over to support." And so Nathan, Jack, are you guys familiar with Slate at all?
No.
No. Okay, cool. He's a drum software developer. He started with Drum Sounds, right? So just emulations of, not even emulations, I'm sorry. It's what he does now. But like record a snare drum, certain samples. He does a sample library of drums. That's how he became successful. And then he used that to transition to like audio emulation. Now he emulates microphones. He's trying to emulate speakers. I think he's got headphones now that he actually emulates, Aaron.
Yep.
I think we talked about that a little bit.
yeah.
And then he does a lot of plugins that emulate. So he emulates like an SSL or tape machines. He's got a bunch of compressors and various things like that. So really, really good software. And I worked for Slate for about a year. He's one of the hardest dudes I've ever had to work for. But such as, you know, people who are good at what they do, sometimes they're just hard to
Yeah.
work with.
Striving and pushing to make a company get off the ground and stuff. They have to be that way.
Yeah. So to shorten up that story a little bit too, you know, I met Slate's sister at a Barnes and Noble. That's how I got the gig. And then once Slate and I weren't going to work out anymore, I moved back to Arizona, worked at Crass. Then I had some personal stuff at home, moved back to Kansas City. My buddy that worked at Slate called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to work at Rode Microphones?" And I had owned an NT1A. I was familiar with it from the mic locker at Crass, and I said, yeah, like I can start in 2 weeks. And so I moved back out to LA. Then, like I said, 6 months later, I moved back to Kansas City, and I've been remote ever since. So it was literally Kansas City to Arizona, Arizona to LA, LA to Arizona, Arizona to Kansas City to LA, LA back to Kansas City. And now Fort Smith, if you count it, but that's not because of audio. But it's only because of people I knew there, internships that I got through knowing people, and various meetings that just happened. So always be looking to meet people. And then I wasn't like at the Barnes and Noble, like, "Slate's sister, give me a job." You know, like you don't want to be aggressive. You want to come off as professional and knowledgeable. But I always then make the joke that I got the job and then I was good enough to not get fired. You know, I dated a girl, and that's how I got the arena gig in Kansas City. Her mom worked with who would become my ops manager. So I interviewed with the ops manager because he emailed his network and said, "Anybody know an audio engineer?" And so 19 years old, I got it because I dated a girl, you know? So like, just always be working towards those connections, and then just come off as professional, not needy, you know, not desperate. No, those are just not attractive traits. And so you want to kind of sell yourself in that way.
I like how you said it. Get the job. Just get the job and be good enough not to get fired.
Fake it till you make it, baby.
Yeah, I agree with that idea. Yeah.
Obviously you should be training to be the best and be good at what you do, but yeah, you're absolutely
Yeah,
correct
but
in
you're
just that.
I think you're saying like you want to, you're aiming high. So you're,
Mhm.
maybe you're not technically qualified, but you'll get the job and you'll figure it out like as you go.
Yeah. If you have the right, and Ryan and me, every time we talk, we always come to the same conclusion. It is really about having the right attitude.
Yes.
If you have the right attitude for that job, doesn't necessarily mean that your skill set is up to par, that you've developed your talent into it, means that your knowledge is complete for that job. There is so much that you learn on the job, on the site. It doesn't matter what you do. Having the right attitude and being honest and frank with the clients, like I'm not completely sure on how to do that, but just give me a minute. I'll figure it out. I'll make it happen. Don't worry about it.
And Slate was so much of that because Slate was also developing new things. You know, he moved away from the drum sampling. So drum sampling, as far as what Slate does, is easy. You know, when Fabrice Gabriel, who is actually his partner, like straight up, he's a Frenchman that he literally is the guy who creates the emulation. He's the one that creates the algorithm. And if I call him a emulation, he gets mad, you know? So I love Fabrice. He's a sweet dude. He's very good at what he does, but without Fabrice, Slate couldn't create tape machine emulations to the quality in which he does and so forth. But every day they were creating something new. So as Slate's assistant, which is all I did. So my job title didn't have a job title. It was just, you're an assistant. So you do whatever Slate calls for. And so, you know, I might be doing anything at that time. So if he went and said, I need you to research like this or that, I don't know crap about that. I'm going to go find out the best I can and get him a report. And then he can try to take some of that with him and do whatever he can, you know? And like I said, you work towards better and better. And I got more and more knowledgeable about what it took to emulate, the algorithms Fabrice was working with and creating, the tape machine that we were testing, you know, like actually going into an SSL and actually creating an emulation through an SSL taught me more about the SSL, you know? So I may not have been the better engineer, but I didn't have to be the better engineer in the room. Slate ran it, Fabrice tested it. I assisted where needed, make that patch, run that system over here, you know, or whatever. And so you just keep growing and keep learning. You don't have to have it. When I was hired, he didn't even ask me if I could. The one thing he asked me was, can you run Pro Tools? And I said, very well. They got me the gig, you know, and, he didn't ask me if I could run an SSL, but I found myself on an SSL every other day, you know, so, and now I haven't used an SSL in 5 years. So I need to relearn it. You know, you don't use it, you lose it, or whatever it is, you know?
All right, cool. So then hi Joya, how you doing? Joya is one of our professors here also.
She left.
Hey, Joya.
She what?
She left.
She left?
I see her. I
She's
see
still here.
her screenshot. There she
Oh,
is.
Oh, yeah, okay, good.
She's
Good.
rocking Atlanta too. I like it.
Okay, so then let's start with the presentation. So my idea of this class, of this blend class, was every month I have students asking me what equipment they need specifically for the task that they're doing, whether they're doing on-location recording, they're doing filming, a lot of students want to do podcasts, and there's such a gamut of products, price ranges, qualities.
Rhode's guilty of that. Yes.
Yes, and exactly, very much. And then you have products that have been redone and redefined to be computer-based interfaces, or you have the same product that's more on the old school where you have you need a chain of analog equipment to make that work.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you have different price ranges, but the qualities are different. So it becomes it always becomes a task of where's your budget? What is are you going to be on the road all the time? Are you what is the quality you're trying to go for? Let's figure out the simplest and easiest way for you to do this, especially when you're starting. And then a company like Rode, I've owned Rode microphones for about 20 years. And
what was your first?
The NT5s.
Love it.
It was
Nice pair.
that was my drum overhead microphones in my home studio back in Puerto Rico for years. And
Perfect.
I felt so cool that I had such great microphones for overheads.
Right.
And I still do. They're in my main studio at Fat Planet. They're there on the shelf, and I'll pull them up whenever I need it, and they still sound amazing. So
Someday I'll get you the TF5s over there at the school, and they're the new upgraded. Hey, we've had the NT5s for 25 years, or it's not 25 years, but how long we've had them. And so they just came out with the Tony Faulkner 5s. And if you're not familiar with Tony Faulkner, he's a mix engineer, live sound tracking engineer for why can't I think of orchestras, and things like that. And he's one of the few living engineers who actually has a microphone technique named after him. So it's an obscure one. Most people don't know about it, but it's in the orchestra world. Anyway, we worked with him to develop some pencil condensers that would be really good in that space. And honestly, they're good on anything. And we're looking to compete with the likes of Sheps and those guys at the top end of pencil condensers.
So DPA and Sheps.
Exactly. On an affordable budget, instead of $5K, we're looking at $1,500. So, 4-match pair for a very clean microphone. And honestly, that's what, so if I may, I'll just segue right into that.
Go ahead.
No, I won't.
All yours.
No, I won't. Why are you dropping out on the computer? It's not a presentation if you don't have one of those. Hey, yo, we're back. I think I need a new cable. That's not good. That's a good segue. Real fast, I'll just mention the Rode side of things. We have what we like to call the Rode difference, which is a cheesy marketing thing, I know, so I apologize for that. But it is really that Rode and Peter Friedman, the creator of Rode microphones, decided to create the microphones in-house. So the big deal here is that we're not trying to outsource this to China, not trying to outsource this elsewhere unless it's local to Australia. So it used to be that the metal workings, so actually it was that the first few microphones, of course, to make a living, make them inexpensive were the original NT1, which was out in China. It was designed, of course, in Australia and then, outsourced to the manufacturing. Well, that became successful enough and it sounded good. I have one actually, because I happen to work for the company, but that was well before I was even an audio engineer. But, they had one laying around the warehouse, so I just grabbed it. I tested it out. It's a pretty good microphone for being, a Chinese-made and inexpensive microphone. Well, then once his whole goal was to take that microphone and make it in-house. And this is the warehouse out in Silverwater, Australia, just north of Sydney. And the whole purpose of it is buy the machine, build the machine, like down to we actually lathe the metal now. So not everything can be made in this smaller warehouse. They actually just bought the lot right to the right side of this. And our CEO was joking last time I was down there that his goal is to get the whole industrial block so he can have all the space he needs. But they buy the machines, they put them in this warehouse, and they design, manufacture, and sell them right there out of that space. Then they go to Long Beach, California, like I told you earlier, and then they come to guitar centers and camera shops and all that stuff to you all. So very streamlined system, and that's all because Peter wanted to build it right there. So that's the Rode difference and why we feel pretty proud about it. Not only that, it allows us to manipulate the prices, keep them low while still keeping margins high for our retailers and stuff like that. So just to drive it home, we're a wholesaler here in the United States. Like Rode Australia is the manufacturing. They sell it to us here in the US. We're actually owned by Rode Australia. and then we distribute it to those retailers who then pay theirs. It keeps the margins as low as humanly possible, which then keeps the shared prices as few as possible, which means if we were to outsource that to 15 different places, they'd get a cut of it every single time, which would make the microphone more expensive just by the nature of that. So they've streamlined the whole thing, all the while they're making them in Australia. It's a really cool process to make a really good microphone at a very affordable price. So that's Rode Australia and what I do. Does anybody have any questions about Rode or what I do? All
No,
right,
sounds like an awesome job.
Dude, I love it. And like I said, I don't have to sell a commission. I don't have to make a commission every month, which is really cool. My commission is kind of like handshakes, like classes, having 4 or 5 people in a class. You might think that that's not a very good number, but funny enough, if I go to a camera shop before COVID, I'd meet 2 people on average. Like I've done the math, and that's why I pitched colleges was I've had classes upwards of 150, 200 people doing audio 101, that was 2 hours of work. Maybe if you count it like half a day, let's just count it as one day. Seeing 250 people, it takes a long time to get that when you go talk to retailers. So I still go talk to retailers, but my job in particular is about teaching as many people as humanly possible. So I wasn't getting a lot of numbers. My boss really liked it when I pitched it to him to kind of go see other places, and I'm still working on a lot of these retailers doing like online classes and things like that. Thanks to COVID, if you can find some silver lining, that's all I'm doing now. So I'm hoping to keep some of that going and, keep that energy, because if I don't have to spend the money to go to, whatever, Indiana and hotels, food and all that stuff, then just stay in my living room and teach them at home. Actually I'm in my home office, my studio here at home, but if I can teach from here, it's a lot cheaper than if I have to go every single place to do it. So it's also about optimizing that. So all good. We'll move into the real deal.
Yep.
Cool. So where to start? We're going to start with podcasting because a lot of the tech is going to fall into the other. So we got podcasting today, we got wireless, and we have mobile are our major categories. And a lot of what falls into podcasting is, funny enough, going to actually fall into the other 2 categories with a few exceptions. But the equipment for podcasting is going to look, most of you really know this, it's something like a USB microphone. Rode has the Podcaster, the NT-USB Mini. We actually have a full NT-USB as well. And our new VideoMic NTG, which is actually what I'm using right now. I'm using it in analog, but you can actually plug in a USB-C and run it to a computer as well. And it's got the interface and everything built into it. So very functional from a standpoint of just plug and play. We're going to get into that on some of the finer points, the functionality of those in a second. Obviously, XLR analog microphones. I put the analog in there because a lavalier may not necessarily be XLR, and something we're going to talk about a little bit further as well is how the heck do I get this device to plug into that device and make it work? So on that note, Rode very much real fast on the XLR mics, the Pod mic and the Procaster. The Procaster is what I typically go with. The Pod mic was a brand new upgraded microphone, if you want to call it upgraded. Upgraded is the wrong word. It's a $99 podcasting microphone. It's a broadcast microphone at $99, which doesn't exist in the market today. And unfortunately, we came out with it right before COVID. So the manufacturing has been difficult. It's also very hard to create a microphone at that price. So bear with us if you're familiar with the Pod mic, but it's an incredibly powerful XLR microphone. It's very small. It's, only about 6 inches as far as its overall length. And then the Procaster would be your big, like, hey, it might be an RE20 or, something like that. So a few more professional features in like a Procaster, but the Pod mic is a powerhouse for people on a budget and starting to do a podcast, So in the space of audio interfaces that Rode has, we were not in this space for a long time. And I actually specifically remember calling my sales manager out in Australia to say, dude, I need a solution for podcasting. Like, I'm sick of telling people that an inexpensive, affordable way to do podcasting is literally, I did the math on it one time. I could go buy not Behringer, so Behringer microphones, but then Aaron, what's the audio interface that has like 4 channels and Steinberg? It just hit me.
Yeah, Steinberg. Yeah.
Steinberg. Yeah. So Steinberg has some really good interfaces. If you're not familiar with Steinberg, they're the ones that do Cubase and Nuendo, DAWs. And so they've been in the audio industry for quite a while. They're also the ones that created ASIO for All, which is a lifesaver for many manufacturers. Different topic. They know their audio. So they had an affordable, like 4-channel audio interface. And like I could do a whole podcasting system with them for like $300, $400 if you added phone signaling. So Rode, I talked to my boss out in Australia, and he just straight up said, it's coming. You know, fear not. It's on its way. And dude, I did not expect them to come out with an entire podcasting desk console. We call it a studio. Is anybody familiar with the Rodecaster Pro?
I've heard of it. I don't know it though.
Yeah. Anybody in podcasting? Anybody trying to do a podcast?
I
I see
I'm
a hand
not
back there. Couple.
I'm not doing a podcast, but I think the company I'm working for might be interested in trying to pursue that next year. So this would be
I'm really
good to
happy.
know.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, then good. And that's good because I make, it's not really it's kind of a joke. Like I get medical doctors, like not even associated with my fiance, but like, I've literally had like a dermatologist call me and say, somehow I'm doing a podcast now to advertise my company, you know, so everybody's a podcaster, you know? And so it's something that's fairly simple to get into. And when Rode dropped this, we were the first to the market, which is crucial. And then there you go, Aaron, zoom that baby in. Love it. That's awesome. We needed something that allowed people to basically in one box do all the podcasting things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but you don't even need that. An audio interface fully functional in that space, and we'll talk more about the actual functionality of it in a second, but the AI1, which is the audio interface right there next to it, is a single channel preamp, phantom power, audio interface, in and out, headphone amplifier, speaker amplifier. I travel with that everywhere I go. The whole purpose of it is to, I mean, it's this big, you know, so like put it like right up to my body, you know, it's this big, you know, and so incredibly, so I have it right here. I have 2 of these. It's right in my backpack. Here you go. It's less than my face. So the whole purpose of it is to be very, very small format, good microphone input. The preamp has 52 dB of gain. Can't ask for much more than that for a $130 interface. So something like that's going to give you the ability to plug and play into your computer with good conversion, a good XLR microphone, and it's easy to travel with. So awesome in that space. So let's get into the functionality a little bit about, and this is where we're really going to get into the tech, you know, and again, I apologize for these being kind of like blasted at you right here in the podcast section. I just want you to know that these next few slides are going to be very, very true to every single equipment, every piece of equipment that we talk about here in a second, and also all the spaces. Like if I'm using a mobile phone, if I'm using a wireless system or whatever, this functionality right here not only works for podcasting, but for the others. So I threw it in there early on. First, everybody familiar with these 2 words?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks to Aaron.
All right. Exactly. There you go. Nathan, you good here, man? If you got some questions, yeah, let us know. But Aaron's got you also on that dynamic microphone. Long story short, as you watch the GIF that Sydney was nice enough to create for me, actually 2 of my favorite things that I get to throw into presentations because they look professional. The one on the left, you'll see a voice coil. It's got a diaphragm so that it's catching audio. It moves that voice coil across the magnet. Boom, that becomes your audio. The other one, a condenser microphone, diaphragm against the back plate. It's not against the back plate, sorry, the space between, let me do this here. The space between the back plate and the diaphragm moving in and out creates the audio there. So condenser microphones tend to need a voltage. If you are familiar with Electret condenser microphones, they're pre-charged. Otherwise, you probably heard of phantom power, 48 volts. That goes to that back plate, and that's the reference voltage there. So what's known as a capacitance microphone. And I won't get too deep into that. I'll let Aaron handle that for you guys a little bit later. If you got more questions on why, what, then you can definitely ask. But let me tell you why. Why does it matter? You know, a dynamic microphone is harder to push. It's got a voice coil in it and it's strapped to the diaphragm. It's harder to push because it weighs more. It's not heavy to us, but it's heavy to sound pressure levels. So it's harder to move. So things that are good about that would be that it is rejecting a lot of the other sounds that might be happening around you. So it's harder to move. So things like reflections off of a wall, not even kidding, like a TV on in another room, things like that, it's harder to move that diaphragm. So it can be really good in rejecting things. Condenser microphone is going to pick up freaking everything. So if you have a bad room, if you have a dog barking outside, if you do have the TV on in another room, it's possible that it's going to pick it up. Now, why is a condenser good? That sounds negative to a condenser. Well, it's more accurate. It picks up things the way they happen in space. It's what we use for like vocals because we get the breaths and the eccentricities of it. But dynamic microphones are used for vocals all the time as well. So things like louder SPL, like screamers and metal music and stuff like that, or got a lot of hunters, you know, I'm in the Midwest, you know, so things like gunshots. That's a bad example because typically you're pitching a condenser microphone for that, but you're placing it at a farther range. But I'm more just saying, like, if you're doing louder sources, you might need to use a dynamic microphone. It's something to consider because it might be better for that application. So without getting too far into those details, dynamic's going to be more controlled and isolate a little bit better. Condenser is going to be more sensitive and capture the way you perform it. And condensers typically can allow you to get further away from a microphone, but if you have a bad room, you can never stop physics. So whatever's happening between that is going to be picked up. Whatever's happening in the room is going to be picked up. So you got to consider that. And my mantra in every class I do is always, it's not about how far from the microphone you can get. It's how close you can get the microphone without ruining the shot. So right now I am on a condenser microphone. Like I said, typically I'm on the Procaster, which is a dynamic microphone, but for today's setup, I gave it a try with the NTG, and it's 6 inches away from my face, right? So got to set up good gain structure, and then also make sure things are not, you know, happening too much around my room and things like that. But it's something that can make me sound a little more natural. I can get 6 inches away. If this was the dynamic microphone, I could still pick up audio here, but it might increase the noise floor, and you might have to crank it up a little bit more. If it was a dynamic microphone, I'd probably get right up on it, like 2 inches. So keep that in mind. And that's where picking the type of microphone is important to what you're going to be doing. That, as well as polar patterns. Everybody familiar with these a little bit, or at least heard of them? Nathan says no. That's cool. All right. So the polar pattern is where the microphone picks up, AKA directional. You might hear of like a directional microphone, super directional microphone. A shotgun microphone is a synonym for super and hypercardioid over there on the right-hand side. So back over here, like shotgun microphones would be like the VideoMic Pro Plus, NTG 4 Plus. You've probably seen microphones like this. It's actually one of the things that made Rode what we are today, doing those video mics right there. But then you're looking at cardioid, which is the most common, something like a vocal microphone. The most important thing about polar patterns is not necessarily where it picks up. I always joke about what makes me a professional is not so much what I capture. It's fairly easy to capture things. It's actually quite hard to get rid of things. So one of the things that makes you a professional is more what you get rid of in the signal than what you accept. Now, obviously, if you don't get audio or the dialogue's bad, you're fired, but maybe not. But, you know, that's bad if you don't get the dialogue. So with a cardioid pattern, it actually rejects directly behind the microphone. Funny enough, I actually stole this from Shure because Rode doesn't have one yet. So this is an example of a Shure microphone, but Rode has a cardioid, supercardioid, and all that stuff. If you look at those bubbles, you can see that the behind the microphone is actually turned down. It's not a full circle there. Same thing with the hyper and supercardioid. You notice that actually at about 30 degrees off the backside of that microphone, it's reducing the audio there. So omnidirectional picks up from every direction. In the case of podcasting, there's a ton of people out there that are learning that will pick an omnidirectional microphone, say like a Blue Yeti or something like that. And the Yeti actually gives you options, but they'll set it to omnidirectional, place it right in the middle of everybody, and hope for good audio. That's going to do so many things. One, it's a condenser. Two, it's omnidirectional. So it's picking up every direction very sensitively. That's not good for podcasting. It's not good for many things. Orchestra, omnidirectional sounds awesome, but they're loud and they're in good rooms, typically. So you're okay to create that natural sound. And a podcast, no. What happens when somebody just moves closer to the microphone? You know, they just lean in and like start talking, or they laugh incredibly loud. Like, they're going to be picked up more than anybody else. Proximity to that microphone is also going to add and subtract according to what's happening. Not only that, they're going to bounce off every corner of the room, come right back to the microphone and sound like they're a football field away. So you got to make sure that you're picking the right polar pattern as well as picking the right type of microphone. These are the two things that I teach everybody to look at before they buy a microphone. Where's it going to cancel and where's it going to pick up? It's crucial. I'll kind of blow through this one a little bit. If anybody wants this later, feel free, or we can come back to it at Q&A. But this is stuff like preamps and pads. So like across the horizontal, left to right, is the human spectrum of hearing. So 20 hertz to 20,000. It's just a scale that was created by us. Like there's nothing really other than a reference point. Roll off is the crucial one that I want to show you all here. Like, again, I'm using the VideoMic NTG and it has a roll off built into the microphone. What a roll off does is take the lower frequencies, things like wind, air conditioner rumble. In the case of music, like a vocal doesn't necessarily get below 80 hertz or 150 hertz. 150 hertz, you start affecting things. So the VideoMic NTG actually has a roll off for 75 and for 150. Right now it's set to 75. So it's not really going to affect my voice. The human voice doesn't really get down there. However, the 150 would start slowly affecting my voice. The more you roll off the microphone, the more it gets rid of those low frequencies, which if I was in like a Comic-Con situation trying to interview people with 100,000 people like talking and chattering behind me, that creates this like low end resonance that is going to be way more energy and distracting to my recording, maybe even detrimentally so. So I'll roll them off at something as extreme as like 150. So to get rid of those low frequencies. Vertically, it's what would be called a pad or a preamp. So a preamp boosts the signal. Think of like a TV remote. You just take the TV remote and bump it up by 20, or take the TV remote and turn it down by 10. Pad stands for pre-attenuation device, and it just attenuate just means turn down. That's it. So again, going back to those loud sources or quiet sources, what did I say earlier? It's not about getting farther away from that microphone. I don't want to turn it up to 20 just because I can then get farther away from it. I'm going to turn it up so that I can take away like my preamps. Main thing Rode does with that inside of the VideoMic line, like the VideoMic Pro Plus, is put them on there so we can turn down the cameras, which don't have very good preamps. After that, you put a pad on it. So it's like if it's loud sources, again, those hunters or like car races and things like that, just something that's a loud source, you can turn the microphone down by 10 and move on.
And before you move to the next one, and I'm sure you're going to talk about it now, one thing that does come up is, and I try to really nail down on in classes, is understanding noise floor of audio equipment. Every device, whether it's the camera, the microphone, the console, everything produces a low noise floor that you listen to. It sounds like the TV white noise that's happening, right? So different equipment is going to have that different noise floor. A camera, it's not made to be a high quality audio device. It's made to be a high quality video and image capture device. It has an audio option, but the signal to noise ratio and the quality of that circuitry is going to be way higher way lower than the signal to noise ratio in that podcast interface that Rode is offering. Okay, so understanding that a microphone, that if you're going to buy a microphone for a camera, having a microphone like that Rode that offers a preamp that you can boost the signal 10 to 20 decibels before it gets to the camera. Now that means that the camera has to do 10 to 20 decibels less of amplification to that signal, which means that now you're pushing that noise floor of the camera down by 10 to 20 decibels. And then now you figure out, is that person 5 feet away? Then maybe I just put the preamp at 10. But if it's 3 or 4 people, they're 10 feet away. Now I put the preamp at 20, so I get more juice coming out of the camera. And then you go to the next slide that Ryan is doing, and then you just adjust the level, like a fine-tune adjustment on the camera. But the camera is doing very little amplification, so you're bringing less noise of that equipment into your recording.
Absolutely. 100%.
Question.
You're hired. No, that's exactly what I was going to show here. And this, I just pick, this is a Canon camera, and this applies for everything. Like I said, we're going to get into wireless and mobile. It doesn't matter what the device is. They all have this. And we were talking about USB microphones, right? So USB microphones would be inside the computer. The audio interface is actually built into those microphones instead of being built into, say, a computer, or sometimes it's your phone that does the conversion and various things like this. And this is all stuff that you would research before you really make the decision. And later on in this prezzo is basically, how do I overcome some of the problems, or what do I worry about when I set some of this stuff up? And it's so much about signal flow, and just, you know, if you mess this part up, good luck saving it. You know, some of you missed this, but we were talking about phones kind of like creating noise inside of your recording and stuff before. And, you know, it's just like that. Good luck trying to get rid of it after it happens. You're trying to create better audio before it goes anywhere else. And it's all linear. If I take a microphone and boost it by 20, which again, Rode has that preamp built onto it, the goal is to minimize the next piece of gear's influence on it, right? And honestly, the less influence on a sound you can get, the cleaner it's going to be. There are devices out there, like I'm sitting in front of an Aphex channel. Rode acquired Aphex, if you probably haven't heard of it. It's a company from the 70s, but I know Aaron has. But it's a tube preamplifier is all you need to know. The tube inside of it's going to create noise. And again, sometimes that saturation, that harmonic generation is wanted. You know, I'm not saying don't have a Neve transformer in your signal flow because it sounds awesome. But if you're going for clean, you don't want a tube preamplifier. You would want to minimize the tone going into it. So you're picking and choosing according, and as long as you know what and why, you're going to be fine. But totally thought the camera was on me for a second there.
So now, go ahead, Jack. Jack, you had a question about this topic?
Yeah. So I have the Video Mic Pro Plus. I don't know if you can see it back here.
Ooh, you're also hired.
Yeah. So, and I keep it just like you guys were saying. I keep it at plus 20 dB and to keep my camera audio level as low as possible.
Like one, yeah.
It's basically one. Two max. But let's say I do get if I were to put something like that on a good like an actual dedicated recorder, audio recorder, would it be ideal to keep it at 0, or would I still want to boost the level of my microphone to keep the camera or the audio recording device level as low as possible?
So I always go back to it depends, and I always apologize for saying it depends so much in my classes because
don't apologize. Don't apologize because Jack's heard that 10 times from me already.
Yeah, I know.
Aaliyah has also.
Right. And so much of what we do becomes artistic. That's actually why people are, especially like video space, right? So what's the camera you're using?
I've got an A7 III.
A7 III. Sony's kicking butt right now, man. And they make their own microphones too. So like they're doing well with it. They'll still admit to you that their built-in internal microphones and preamps are not that great. Even a lot of their stuff is built outside of the camera so that it can do one job, which is create audio. So the reason I say it depends is because it's all going to matter. First of all, what are you capturing, right? So the first question you're asking yourself is, am I just doing dialogue from 3 feet? Pretty easy to manipulate sound at that space, right? Like I am right now. You know, if this was plugged into, I'm using a GH4 from Lumix. If this was over there plugged into the camera, it would be 4 feet away from me. I'd be using the internal Lumix preamps, which are not good. And that's specifically why Rode wanted us to use Lumix, was because you're trying to overcome the problem that is the built-in preamp. Since I know that, I'm not using it. Nope. Like, get away from it, run away fast as you can. So I'm actually using the ATEM Mini right now, and the microphone's doing the legwork. I actually have the ATEM doesn't care. It's just mic level, and then on the back of the NT USB, sorry, not the NT USB. I'm fired. You're hired. I'm fired. The Video Mic NTG. Too many letters in the Rode lineup. I didn't say that, Rode. I apologize. The Video Mic NTG has the preamp actually on the back of it. It's a dial that actually allows you to turn and adjust the level. I know you can't see that very well, but it's the first one that Rode actually created where it actually had the dial on it instead of just like a flip switch. So plus 20 down to 0 is a huge jump, and just to click a switch over to 0 is a lot, you know. So to answer your question, you're probably never really going to want to use an internal preamp on the camera, so always do that. What I then tell people is, like, let's say you're doing a loud source at close proximity, somebody who's singing or somebody who is well spoken, you're probably going to start distorting your signal. So to go back into this image, if for those of you that don't know, forget about anything that's on the meters short of the whole span. Again, this is something that people created to basically reference a lot of things. You might get a meter that says 0, you might get a meter that says plus 60. The meter doesn't really matter. Obviously, you should read the manual and kind of understand what they're saying, but in generalities, I teach it as a spectrum. It's 100% scale, right? So 0 is 100%. If you've ever heard of DBS full scale, that's digital scaling. In digital scaling, once you hit 0, you're distorted, you're clipping, you're turning your sine waves into square waves. And that's an ugly, terrible distortion that just does not translate as musicality and so forth. So don't hit 0 on that. But the point I'm getting at is that I'm looking at all the scales, no matter what they say, as 100% scale. And I'm aiming for about 70%. You know, and again, I'm talking very general here. There's a lot of engineers who might say negative 18 dBFS. There might be a bunch of engineers that just say, you know, I want to hear RMS, or Aaron could probably talk your ear off more about it than I could. But the goal here from a camera standpoint is I'm aiming for 70%, give or take. I use a Zoom H5. I like the Zoom H5 at more like 50%. I just feel like it has a weird headroom that doesn't translate very well. And so I turn it down at the preamp and turn it up later if need be, you know, and usually I don't even need to, short of my final mixing and mastering. But with your camera preamp, you're probably going to minimize it as much as humanly possible. And so if it distorts and clips at that 0 or at that above, you know, or towards 100%, then you're going to actually turn down the microphone to 0 and then fine tune the preamp on the camera, because you still have to try to aim for that 50 to 70% or whatever it might be for you. So you can't distort and clip. So you back the microphone back to 0, right? If it was my Video Mic NTG, I would just roll the preamp back until it was hitting that percentage, right? Because 0 on the mic is off. So I'd keep my camera at 1 and use the microphone to do better audio in that space. But when you got a 20 dB jump on the Video Mic Pro or Video Mic Pro Plus, that's a huge jump. So you'd turn it down to 0 so you don't clip, and then you'd fine tune the camera to make it as good an audio as you possibly can. The only other solution after that is to move it to a different preamp and or reposition the microphone. And you typically don't want to do that. So does that answer your question?
And Jack, was your part of your question, even if you're not using a camera, if you're using a dedicated audio interface?
Yeah, I just want. Yeah, so like if I were to use a dedicated like it's like the Zoom H5 or
great,
whatever.
Yeah. So I do use the H5, and so that was actually that was the presentation answer. So keep that in mind for things you're doing there. So yes, to answer your question, I typically start out with the microphone. So I get this question a lot with like pads for, say, a kick drum. You're going into a professional board or otherwise. If your microphone like distorts the preamps because of a lot of gain, you have to start with the microphone at -5, -10, depending on what the source is. But I typically, and Aaron, you correct me if you have a different approach here, but I like to start with the microphone because it's all linear. What happens at the microphone then affects the preamp. What happens at the preamp then affects your software. What happens at your software then affects your final print, or so on and so forth, right?
And I agree with that, because with the research that I've done and just years of doing it, there is a tone change between using a pad on a microphone and using a pad on a console or an audio
So
interface.
true.
And it's
So true.
cleaner and it's cleaner and more transparent to use the pad on the microphone than it is on a preamp or a console, because the circuitry is different, and the circuitry that you have to apply it to it later on a preamp does affect the color
That's right.
of the signal.
Well, and let's think of it this way from a linear standpoint again, is if I just let the signal be what it is in through the microphone and don't even consider it, then it gets to the processing, if you want to call it that, like it gets to a console, and then you EQ and compress and do various things like that. You're essentially just saying, like, give me whatever you want to give me, and not really thinking about that first stage. If you pad a microphone, like that kick drum example I was talking about, the tone that comes from that is just like picking a different microphone, is just like not padding it, like your console doesn't know, your console doesn't care, so then you can kind of use each stage at its appropriate function. And then you can boost or cut or compress or not, all those things on that second stage, giving you more flexibility, giving you more functionality. And also, to be the super nerd again here, the jump from microphone level to line level, if you're not familiar with those guys, everything, it used to be line to speaker. And funny enough, that still exists, but we don't see it anymore because speakers are powered. So the amplifier lives inside the speaker. I got a set of monitors right over here. It used to be what was called passive systems. So you'd have a speaker and then an amplifier outside of that. You'd have to do both. So it was mic level, there's instrument level as well, then line level, and then speaker level. And every single one of them has a different voltage, has a different impedance, has a different, all that stuff's crucial to the jump. So mic to line level is a huge, huge jump. It's like if this is microphone level, then it's like line level to speaker, or it's and then line to speaker would be like nothing, microphone to line to speaker has a lot more voltage and things like that, if I remember correctly, but it doesn't matter as much because the jump from line to speaker was not as big of a jump. When you think of microphones running millivolts, like fractions of volts, whereas line level runs in full voltage. So the jump from a millivolt up to such and such voltage is a larger jump. If you mess that space up, it's hard to get it back, so keep that in mind too. Again, that's the super nerd side of it, but.
Right, and then to round off that a little bit more, like you've heard me talk, Jack, and everybody else taking my class, it really boils down to, one, understanding everything that Ryan has explained about all the pieces of equipment. Where is the proper way to optimize it? Then you take your time, experiment, not on location, experiment at home, try a couple of different recordings, and understand and know what's the sweet spot for each equipment that you're using, that you're buying. If you're using a Zoom, if you're using whatever other handheld type of recording, you hook up a microphone, crank the preamp on the microphone, and then record something, and then now put the microphone to 0, and then crank the preamp on the Zoom, and then record the exact same thing, and then sit down with headphones and listen to it. Is there a difference in quality? Do you hear more noise floor on the Zoom cranked up than when you hear the microphone preamp cranked up? And that's a teller right there. Because if you're hearing less noise off of the microphone, the noise flow of the microphone, then always do it on the microphone. And there's a difference between this type of equipment and the pro audio music equipment that I use. I use a preamp like an Eve or an API or a tube preamp because it imparts tone. And I sometimes want to drive that preamp more to impart more tone into it because that color is I'm looking for. So I know that this preamp imparts this color, crank it. This other preamp doesn't impart much color at all, so I can just get as much level out of the microphone and be more efficient on my recording with that preamp, and I'm fine. Or if I really want to record, let's say an orchestra that I need to gain a lot of, I'm gonna have to apply a lot of gain, I will not use a heavily colored preamp, because you're gonna hear way too much of the color and possibly noise from that preamp. So understand the equipment, understand as much as possible what Ryan is explaining with how the function, what the preferences are. And once you have some sort of understanding of what each preference and setting does, now sit down, experiment with each setting until you become aware of what you're hearing, what the differences are. Okay?
Absolutely. And to pick this up from a Rode perspective too, and Aaron's absolutely correct, and you all as Full Sail eventual grads should definitely be paying attention to that stuff, and you should know that stuff, right? Let me talk to the person who may not care as much, right? It may not be you guys, but someday you may be, and I'm going to sound like a disgruntled tech for just a second, but I can't tell you how many times I've had a photographer talk to me at a show and they're trying to start a podcast or trying to start a video, right? They're trying to do video instead of photo, right? Instead of stills, they're doing moving picture. Audio is terrible. And like, they don't even want to look at this menu. I don't care if that person knows that this is mic to line level. It's irrelevant. I understand that's maybe, I don't even think that's super nerd. I think that's 101, right? But at the same time, they don't need to memorize that it's line level. All I want them to do is please open that menu. Just take 2 seconds, put the microphone up, close as possible, next to me if I'm the talent, like I said, 6 inches right here. And then go into that menu, have me talk, and then set that level to 70%. If you can at least do that, you're going to have a happier time. And you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, depending on your experience, at how many people don't even want to open that stupid menu. And it's not good. I can't help at that point, right? So at very least, if tomorrow you simply are back in whatever job and creating a podcast for, like I said, a doctor, you got a dermatologist and somehow you're now doing their podcast, right? They go, I don't care about setting up this or that, just make it work, and if you at least put the microphone on, go into that menu and have them talk a couple times, they might be frustrated at you knowing that they don't know anything about audio. If you can do that, you can make your job work in very basic terms. But if you ignore it, you're never going to make it work, and that person's still going to be frustrated. So unfortunately, half the time we're the bad guy, especially for people who don't understand sound. For that reason, we got to take 2 seconds to be here and think about that stuff. We got to spend 2 seconds thinking about this. We got to take 2 seconds and think about that. So half of that's going to be your pre-production, and then the other half is going to be live while you're actually shooting it. But if you can do at least that as a beginner, or as somebody who may not necessarily need to be as nerdy as Aaron and myself, then you can at least get some job done, get some work done.
And one more thing before we just move on to the next slide.
Yeah, you saw that, didn't you? Yeah. Oops.
To continue on that, understanding the equipment and taking the time to kind of go through it, establishing some basics is really important. For example, I got hired last month to do a outdoor drive-in church service. They had tried to do it before. The person who was doing it before, they had several issues. It wasn't sounding good. People weren't hearing things correctly. A whole bunch of issues, and they had good equipment there. They had a console, speakers, and everything else. All was brand new that they just bought at Sam Ash or whatever.
Right.
And they hired me to do it. I show up. I set everything up. I do just the basic minimum. I set all the faders to 0. I do my gain structure, set the speakers, make sure that the speakers are aiming correctly, that the amplification from one thing to the other, from one speaker to the other is all good. And I just get the pastor behind the mic. I get the music director with your guitar behind the mic. Everything's sounding great. And then after the service was done, everybody could not stop complimenting. Oh, what a huge difference you made. This is amazing. I could hear myself. Everybody could hear themselves. We had an FM transmitter. Everybody in the car was great. Everybody, Aaron said that the sound is so much better. And then the church manager came to me and says, okay, so Aaron, how can we get this to work correctly and as good as this last time? Because it just didn't work last time. I'm like, I don't know, because I didn't do anything different. I just put everything where I'm supposed to put it, and that was it. And he was just kind of stomped. I was basically saying whoever did it before just didn't know what the hell they were doing. And that's your problem, because I did nothing special. I just set it up, put everything where it needed to be, and that's it. No tricks, nothing else. I just understood the equipment, understood my gain structure, and that's it, period. Okay?
Aaron's absolutely correct. I can't stress it enough just how important each one of those positions are. And just to drive it home, microphone into the preamp, into any kind of staging that you might be doing, like outboard gear, EQs, compressors, and then into software, right? You still got to make sure Pro Tools is happy, or et cetera. And then we can talk all day about then what do you do in mixing, and what do you do in mastering, but not really relevant for this. If you mess this up, again, you can't save it later. So focus on that. But real fast, does anybody have any questions? So that was the nerd stuff, right? That will be brought up throughout the rest of this presentation. Did I lose anybody? Does anybody have any questions about lingo or anything that we can do there?
I'm ready to keep going.
Nathan, did we lose you, man? You good? Any questions on polar patterns?
I'm a little lost on a lot of things, but I think that's just I think that's just I just need to do a little looking up on terminology and stuff like that.
No worries. At the end of this will be my email address. So by all means, take that down. And, other than EDU discounts that we have on the microphones, I'm here for you as far as hey, I'm now trying to do a roll off and I don't know why or what. And I don't want to lose you on that, and it's going to be something that you're going to do almost every day as you progress through Full Sail too. So it's going to come around,
Sure.
So don't be disgruntled by the fact that it's, what we did just right now. So hang tight as we go. If I lose you again, as far as okay, reiterate that, please just let me know. Anybody else, ladies? Good. All right, cool. Moving on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons. These we're just going to I'm going to reiterate, but kind of be a little more clear on it. Obviously with USB portable, right? So the microphone is the audio interface. It's built into the microphone, or it doesn't even have it and lets the device be the interface, depending on what the setup is like. You don't need an extra piece of gear. So it's quote unquote plug and play. So I don't need that AI1 or Rodecaster Pro. I just need the USB microphone that has that mixer built into it. Mixer is the wrong word in the case of just if I'm just using the microphone. So the NT USB Mini that's over there on the bottom left is not going to be a mixer. It's one microphone and it's one thing that goes into a computer, and then the computer says, hey, let's use this as our sound card. So I always talk to people about my setup for USB, and that's to make the hardware happy with the software. Sorry, I skipped ahead. The hardware happy with the operating system, the operating system then happy with the software. So if I'm using a Mac computer and then a USB microphone, the Mac computer operating system has to see the sound card, and that is the USB microphone instead of being whatever's built into it. So you're choosing that. Then let's say you open Pro Tools, you then have to tell Pro Tools, I am using the USB microphone. So there's three places that have to be happy. Microphone has to be happy with OS. OS has to be happy with software, and it goes all that way. So once you get that initiated, that's it. Computer plugs right into the microphone, software starts running, all happy. It's fairly easy to use because it's only those 3 places. And if you do an audio interface, you have to do that as well. So it's just really easy to travel with, essentially plug and play. It's cheaper typically because it's less gear, etc. So yeah, just that's kind of like what makes it beneficial. Some of the cons though is like you're stuck with that one microphone. I do not know why computers cannot get smarter. I'm not an IT guy, and they're super smart. They do so much, but the fact that I can only plug in one USB microphone at a time, unless I create what's called an aggregate device, conversation for another day. And even then it's like very insecure. It's not necessarily going to be like a good setup. If I'm about to do that, I'll just go ahead and get an audio interface. They're so affordable today and so forth that you don't need to try to do it. So they're less versatile. You don't have a bunch of parts that you can replace, or otherwise you got the one thing and that's it. And so again, one microphone at a time also creates part of that lower versatility. And then, so if I break an XLR on a studio setup, I can just replace the XLR. If something happens inside this microphone, like a USB microphone, you can't replace it. You got to go get it repaired or something like that. So it's less versatile in that space. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean it's bad. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Just have a plan and have a solution for overcoming those problems too. I can't tell you how many tech calls I've taken where it's broken and they expect like a replacement or something like that. Have a backup, have another plan. And it's not so much on Shure to replace your SM7B if you run it over with a truck, which apparently can be, and just have that secondary solution for if something goes wrong.
Yeah, and one thing with USB microphones, you guys have to understand that you're buying something like a Yeti for $200. There is so many things in that microphone that are happening that they've been able to take a big analog processing chain and put it inside the body. You're talking about audio preamps, where in my world, good preamps start at $500 for one channel. Then the microphone per se would be another, $300 to $500, and then the audio interfaces are, $200 to $300, and they're combining all that, and then the interface also has a headphone. The microphone has a headphone output, so a headphone amplifier is another $100 to $200. So they're compacting all that into one tiny little box that makes it so easy plug and play. That, not to sound like an old guy, but that did not happen 20 years ago when I was starting in this industry. And it's simplifying everything. So you plug and play. You plug it in, you go to Audition, and automatically shows up on your hardware as an option. You see it, Yeti in, Yeti output device, and that's it. The con of it is, yes, if that breaks, you now lost your microphone, you lost your preamp, you lost the interface, and you lost your headphone out. You have no way of going in and out of your computer that way, okay? So having the backup of an interface or anything else is crucial, because your whole base is your whole studio is based around that. Go ahead.
Well, one thing I add to that is, and I apologize for being the microphone salesman that tells you to buy more gear, but I'll come back from that betrayal real fast and say, I don't care if it's a $15 USB Chinese made whatever. How much is the Behringer like QU2? I think it's something like that. It's all over the podcasting like forums. They did a great job just creating something that is a solution. I've had people buy the Rodecaster Pro. It's $599, and then they buy 4 dynamic XLR microphones, and they run it through a Mac laptop, and they buy that laptop specifically for their podcast and their show. So they spend thousands of dollars, let's just say, by the time the whole thing's said and done. And then if the Rodecaster goes down, they're dead. They can't keep their show going, And so if you have that kind of budget, you might buy 2 Rodecaster Pros. And I'm not saying that you have to, but if it goes down and if your gig relies on it, think about radio shows. Radio shows always happen. You can't just have it shut down, and they'll lose more money just by being shut down than they would by just simply buying the backup piece of gear. I'm talking about you guys as podcasters. Maybe you buy something as professional as a Rodecaster Pro for yourself, even to do phone calls or whatever, and then you have an AI one to back you up in case something goes wrong. Or you buy the Q2U or whatever it is, a USB microphone, maybe the NT USB Mini, just in case something happens to the other side of it, right? I've always been that audio engineer. I come from a live sound background. If an amplifier went down for my speakers, I had another amplifier behind it to replace it. I didn't call that amplifier manufacturer, QSC or whatever it might be, and like ream them for their amplifier going down. Not only that, Kemper Arena, the amplifiers are like 40 years old. So it's kind of just part of the day. So that's the point, is just having some of those. USB microphone can be a really good backup. It can be a good starting point, but for your guys' standards and what you're going to be learning throughout your program, something higher end is going to be where you start. Have something to fall back on just in case, that kind of thing. All good?
Yep.
All right. So basic needs are just going to be the final little, let's drive home podcasting, right? So things that you're going to need are obviously a microphone. You're choosing what that microphone might be: dynamic, condenser, cardioid pattern, super cardioid pattern. Is it canceling from the sides or is it canceling from the back? Is it condenser so it's super sensitive, or is it dynamic so it's less sensitive? Am I in my bedroom or am I in my professional studio? So that goes into decent room. I'm in a 10 by 10 box here, which is like a nightmare for audio in general, but I have sound paneling up. And then I also typically use a dynamic microphone, or in this case, I'm, like I said, 6 inches away from the microphone. And then I have the air conditioner off. My computer is the only thing in this room that I can hear right now. And it's middle of the day on a Friday. So nobody's really out in suburbia right now. So no cars really messing me up or anything at the moment. After that, headphones. Again, you may or may not be surprised by this, but I have to add it because I get the call once a week. Please don't turn on your speakers and let it run through. 1, feedback loop issues possibly, and 2, delay and echo. Even if you get it kind of working, you bring stuff back into your microphone if you use open speakers, like a Bluetooth speaker, all the way up to studio monitors, or all the way up to a live sound setup. Aaron was talking about doing that church service, and if you got to have speakers maybe for the local crowd, right? So how do you overcome like speakers actually going out to the crowd? Well, we place the speakers in different places so if the microphone's here, my speakers will be, back here behind the microphone. And then also they're going to be placed further away. I'm probably going to pick a dynamic microphone and make sure that it actually doesn't pick up those speakers as easily. And the good news is he was outside, which the best part about outside is nothing comes back. It doesn't bounce off a wall and then come back to you. If you're in a studio, even if you're in a studio and you open speakers up, you might get feedback loops and stuff like that going back into your microphone. So just headphones, man, especially for professionals like yourselves, I wear them as a prop half the time, because Nathan's got them on right now. Jack's got them on right now, I see earbuds, Joya, point is, so you don't get that feedback loop. You don't get things coming back into them. You can hear better. It's more professional, clear, all that stuff. So it's important to have headphones for all those reasons, especially if you're the creator. Cool. Any questions on podcasting? All right. So wireless tech. Good to go. Awesome, Jack. So the equipment inside of wireless microphones, Rode offers the Wireless Go and the Rode Link Filmmaker Kit. We were fairly late to this game. It's kind of funny to talk about now because everybody was just like, you got these video mics and all that stuff, and you don't have a wireless system yet. Well, Rode always had an answer for that, which was we do wired microphones really well, and that's why we didn't get into audio interfaces and everything like that. And lo and behold, we're now into audio interfaces and we're now into wireless systems. So one of the things that's really good about the fact that we were late to that game is that we were able to overcome some of the problems that a lot of our competitors have. And pardon me, choked on something. And so the wireless systems are 2.4 gigahertz. If you're not familiar with that, phones and Wi-Fi systems live in 2.4 gigahertz. That's the frequency in which these signals are being transmitted. And they used to be in, and they still are, but if you've heard of 500 megahertz systems, 600, 700, 800, 900, guys like Shure and Sennheiser who have the market in wireless technology, especially live sound wireless technology, they always use those lower frequencies, because what you need to know about lower frequencies is that they tend to be stronger. Higher the frequency, the more directional it is. And that includes the human hearing range. So like 80 hertz kick drum up to, like a sine wave at 1K for, the warning channel, or a beep for a cuss word or whatever, all the way up to just airiness and stuff like that at 18K and things like that. If you keep going up that spectrum, you hit 500 megahertz, which is obviously a lot. What was that, 500,000? Pardon, I think that's correct. But then you actually get up into gigahertz, which, 2.4 gigahertz is a lot higher than 500 megahertz. The downside to 500 megahertz, 600 megahertz is that the government just sold off 600 to T-Mobile. So they're just like, nah, you take them. You use them for our phones and whatever the heck they're using 600 megahertz for. So Shure and Sennheiser had to actually recall their microphone systems at 600 megahertz because they were no longer legal to use. They no longer had those frequency ranges. So Rode specifically chose to go 2.4 gigahertz because that's phone and Wi-Fi. And so there are also problems there. We're going to get into functionality on in a second. But why they chose it is because it's always legal. If they made those frequencies illegal, we wouldn't be able to use our T-Mobile phone anymore. So it's just why they chose to do that. So they overcame those problems there. Lavalier microphones is a big part of the equipment that you add into. So the Wireless Go has a microphone built into it, but you can also just run a lavalier. And then, yes, I did put gaff tape into this because that's part of like placing a lavalier and some of the techniques. And we're not going to get into actual placement on those. If you have questions, please let me know. But I don't know how many like different triangle sticky pads you make with a gaff tape, and they're really handy to strap microphones to clothing and things like that. Gaff tape is a huge tool, so I kind of consider it part of the wireless game. So
I do have questions about that. Like, should I talk to you later about that, or
bring it up and we'll see. If it's a little too in depth, I'll have you email me later. But what's the question?
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm just wondering what the pros or what it's used for, because I've recently been having some issues with my lavalier mics, because most of what I do is outside filming with people, and a lot of the places I'm filming is really windy. Yeah. And so if it's too windy, I have to, hide the lav somewhere. But then if I do that, then there's, I can't have them move, or else it's going to ruffle. And so I'm wondering if that's where you're coming from with the gaff tape. Like, could that help with placement within clothing to keep it from hitting things and like within their clothing, so they, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with windy scenarios, that's very unfortunate, because windy environments take the whole like easy to capture audio thing and destroy it, and you, like you said. But my first and foremost thing for outside is just show the lavalier, and I know you can't always do that. But a dead cat is the industry term. Rode uses it as our sales. No cats were harmed in the making of the dead cat. I think I see it on your VideoMic Pro back there.
Yeah, I've got the dead cat, yeah.
Yeah. So fur actually knocks down the energy of the wind. Foam then absorbs it. And then distance to the capsule, so like a blimp and stuff like that, creates dead air inside of the chamber to knock down even more. Dead air is actually an insulator, so it protects it even more before it gets to the capsule, so that you can not hear it, hopefully. So the dead cat on a lavalier is crucial, and that can be behind the clothing as well. So you can hide that and help knock down the energy of the wind while still isolating the microphone behind clothing or otherwise. So after that, yes, adding gaff tape. And the technique, one of the techniques I've learned is like, you remember folding pieces of paper into like a football? You play the like little game on the tabletop, kick the field goals with it, whatever.
Yeah.
You kind of fold it like that. It's just folding it into a triangle. And then you keep the sticky part on the outside so that you can stick it to clothing, and then the microphone sticks to it and all that stuff. And you tuck it inside of that. And because it's sticky, the things inside of it don't move. Rode also has what's called the Invisalav, which I like for two reasons. One, it's got two microphone spots, so you can actually, a professional way of doing audio is to have two microphones running at the same time. and one might be turned down a little bit and one might be full volume. And the other thing too is one's a backup for the other in case something drops out. And so it has 2 slots, and then you can also isolate the capsule inside of that rubber grommet to keep some of that down as well. And then if you hide it inside of clothing on skin, it's medical grade and it's behind clothing, which also acts as a windjammer. So Invisilab from Rode, and then also that gaffer tape with a furry windjammer. Just still put the furry windjammer in it. The gaff tape might be enough, but
What
yes,
what is
that's
that
what isolate.
furry? So there's dead cats for the
Oh, yeah.
lavalier mics. Where do you
Yes,
guys
sir.
sell those too?
We do. I don't know if I don't know what the status is on them, but yeah, we have like a 3-pack of dead cats. Yeah, and I think it's
Okay.
literally called Lav Fur or something stupid like that. Fur Lav, or I don't
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, but email me. We'll find it for you.
Okay, cool, man.
Or if you have a different manufacturer, then obviously reach out to them and find out what.
No, I love Rode. So
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Cool. Aaron, anything to add on that? We good?
No, that's good. Keep going.
Cool. All right. So then, that's part of that is actually talking about the functionality and stuff like that. I brought the Wireless Go up on this. It's a new $199 transmitter and receiver all in one pack. So super affordable. 2.4 gigahertz is tough to battle Wi-Fi and phones and stuff like that. But this microphone is meant to just, as the name would suggest, just run and gun. Just tack it on somebody. It's got the clip right on it. And then the Filmmaker kit actually has the belt pack, like the old standard way of using this. This one has the microphone built into it, no wired microphone unless you want it. And you can just tack it on somebody's tie and do an interview real fast. It's for like that Comic-Con scene that I was talking about earlier, where you're going to interview 50 people and you need to do it fast. I no longer have to ask you awkwardly to run the lavalier through shirts and things like that, and make people uncomfortable. Just tack it on and literally start recording. If you want, and I went ahead and chose the microphone that is the older microphone. So this is the SmartLav Plus, more on it in the mobile side of things. But as long as you're TRS, you can plug in an external microphone to the Wireless Go, and then the Filmmaker kit comes with that wired microphone. So the Filmmaker kit is pro, full size, battery pack inside of it, all that stuff. But those are some of the things you got to overcome is, am I going to run a lavalier? Am I going to block the wind? Will I be inside or outside? Do I have the cable to run it? Do I want to just tack it on them and finish up? Just be quick about it. So this will turn the Wireless Go into the traditional standard belt pack if that's how you want to run it. And you don't have to have both if you don't want to. But the traditional way would be like the Filmmaker kit, which is in fact a wired lavalier. And that's the problem. This is the part that I really wanted to get knocked in here. And the best analogy I've ever had explained to me for wireless transmission is avoid the fog. And what that is simply saying that let's say I have a wedding, right? So let's say I'm at a wedding and I'm camera 1 in the middle of the aisle looking back at bride and groom, right? Looking into bride and groom. And then between me is everybody that's sitting there enjoying the wedding, right? Well, you could ask them to turn their phones off, but the chances are they're not going to turn their phones off, and they won't even turn them to airplane mode. They'll put them on silent, and so you're still going to be fighting that frequency. Those signals going through are using the exact same signals that a wireless 2.4 gigahertz audio signal is using. So that is creating this fog, this bubble of things that are happening in this area, and I have to get through that fog and to my receiver from my transmitter, right? And so one of my favorite techniques for actually solving that problem is to move the microphone receiver over to camera 2. So let's say I put up a secondary camera that's looking over the groom's shoulder and looking at the bride, maybe even a camera 3 that's looking over the bride's shoulder and at the groom. So you have 3 cameras set up. Most people think, well, camera 1 has to be audio 1. That is not in any way true. So I can grab the second and third cameras that are not going between the fog. So if camera 1 is here and then bride and groom are directly in front and I got to pass through that fog, moving the receiver and transmitter to be outside of that line of sight or outside of that fog is how you create better audio and less dropouts by avoiding the fog. So does that make sense? Okay, cool.
And just to
What do
give
you
a different point of view of that, it's easy enough also for you to have a Zoom, a recorder, an H recorder, place that close to the writing room and the preacher, and just tuck that, between the flowers or something, so it can
Dude, I
just
was gonna say it. I was gonna
Five-
absolutely say it.
yeah, 5-6 feet away, and just let it record, and
Yeah.
then the cameras do their own thing.
Let's drive it home with a live sound scenario, right? Like we don't put the receiver out in front, like behind the crowd, 100 yards away. If it is arena sound, if it's bar sound, same deal. The better signal is to put it up on the stage and run a balanced XLR signal to front of house. Usually it's built into the house, or today with the digital age, shoot, everything's Cat 5 now. So you just you can run it hundreds and hundreds of feet. So the point I'm getting at is, don't let your wireless signal be the breaking point. Set it up closer, separate it from, and then keep it focused on line of sight and avoid the fog. Cool. So basic needs on that would be, line of sight. Design your shot. Pre-production is crucial here when using wireless signal, because you want to find out how many. So to talk about like good range, that's not only the distance you're going to be from the microphone, but like specifically it's how far away is your receiver and transmitter, and are they in line of sight? And then how many Wi-Fi units are running in the hotel that you're going to be doing whatever at? Might be a ton. Guess what you have to do is you have to get closer, otherwise you just will not get a signal. So good placement, as far as we were talking about, like on the person. One thing about wireless signaling too is more specific to the microphones itself. If I have a setup where it's like an interview and I place a cardioid pattern directional microphone over here on, say, this side, and they talk to a person over here, what just happened? With a cardioid microphone, it changes the tone of that. And so actually just right here, if I talk, like as I go around the microphone, you guys should be like hearing like things changing, dropping out and getting quieter and so forth. That's going to happen with a lavalier as well. So Rode actually creates all of theirs as omnidirectional microphones so that change doesn't happen as drastically. But if I set up an interview where I have a microphone here and I'm talking this way because that person is over here, terrible placement, terrible setup. Move it to this side. Even if they do talk at, say, the audience, it's still placed decently to where it's not going to change much. And if it's omnidirectional, that helps as well. And so then if I talk to the person I'm interviewing, now all of a sudden the microphone is in good proximity, close to it, and I'm facing it. That's crucial to a lot of that. So when I say good placement, it's not just about getting rid of the bad. It's about making sure that your talent is using it appropriately too. And most of the people you put these on are not going to be audio engineers. In fact, 99.9% of them aren't going to be audio engineers. So you're going to have to place it correctly for what they don't know. And then after that, just, Murphy's Law type stuff. Make sure you back up batteries, rechargeable batteries, have full charge on your wireless systems beforehand. So just important things to just be aware of before you go and shoot, right? Any questions on that before we move to mobile?
Are any of those wireless mics that you guys sell XLR inputs, or are they
No.
the other?
I wish. We get that question a lot. And what we do, so primarily our market is DSLR. And that's, so Rode started out in the music industry, NT1As, the NT5s, like Aaron was talking about, XLR professional microphones. One day, the story goes, Peter Friedman was at a soccer game for his kiddos. And he's like, man, the audio sounds terrible in this DSLR. And DSLR was just starting out, and so Canon camera, Nikon camera, whatever. And the story goes, he went, I make microphones. I should make a microphone for this camera. And he did. And it became super popular. And everybody started embracing the DSLR cameras and the space that lived in. And photographers became videographers and so forth. And Rode became the microphone company to kind of do that for them. And so plop that microphone. So a lot of our success, especially moving forward, has allowed us to go and build more studio microphones, but our primary bread and butter is DSLR top microphones. Those DSLRs are not XLR in the average, right? Of course, you can buy a professional camera and have an XLR input, and that's great. All we created 2 adapters, the VXLR and the VXLR Plus. And the VXLR Plus takes power from 48 volts down to plug-in power. So like if you have like a VideoMic Go or something that doesn't have power from the microphone, you can take 48 volts phantom power and dumb it down to 5-6 volts, right? 2.4, 2 volts up to like something like 9 volts is considered plug-in power, depending on the device. If you run 48 volts straight to a VideoMic Go, you'll damage the VideoMic Go over time. It's kind of like applying phantom power to a ribbon microphone of old. There's a bunch of stories on that, but you've always heard about them being damaged by phantom power. It's kind of along that same place, that same vein. You don't want 48 volts running to a capsule that's expecting 5. It's just bad practice. So Rode actually created that adapter to knock it down. The standard VXLR is just for powered. So like the Wireless Go has the output is a TRS 1/8 inch. I didn't have that on there, but it's an 1/8 inch TRS output that would run into a standard DSLR input. So you adapt that from the VXLR to XLR. Now, I don't want to get into balanced cabling versus unbalanced cabling, but just know that unbalanced cabling doesn't run a long way. You can't run it more than like really 30 feet. It becomes an antenna. But a standard XLR cable that actually is XLR, you can run it hundreds of feet. And it would be nice to actually have a balanced XLR microphone. But if and Aaron, maybe you can speak on this too, man. I don't think like the Sennheiser units or anything like that. I think just because they have an XLR port, I don't think they actually are balanced. I think they're still unbalanced. All I'm getting at here is all you got to do is buy that adapter at $15 and you're done, So it gives you a lot of versatility inside of the Rode line as well.
But understanding also that if you're going TRS to XLR and what you're feeding it is expecting a balanced signal, but what the microphone is giving you is not a balanced signal, you're gonna be having some really weird issues. Because if, for example, some microphones are TRS, stereo microphone, it's the TRS means tip, ring, sleeve. The tip could be the left channel, the ring could be the right channel, the sleeve is always ground. But a microphone doesn't work that way. Microphone balance signal is pin 1 is your hot, is your ground, pin 2 is your hot, pin 3 is your low, and 2, your high and low is the exact same signal out of phase from each other. But it's gonna confuse that. It's gonna take your left and your right. It's gonna flip the phase, and your image is gonna be reversed because it's expecting a microphone signal instead of a stereo signal.
Absolutely.
So
it's funny.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's funny because in the mobile section of this is where I've placed the conversation about adapters and
Do it.
all that stuff, because mobile that's its biggest downfall. And we could talk about TRS and TRRS and USB adapters and lightning adapters and stuff like that all day. It's 80% of my tech calls. It's especially for beginners. How do I get this to that? It's signal flow, but for devices that are not designed to really do it as a standard, I don't know how to describe it, but if you got more questions on like XLR versus unbalanced, please email me. Talk to Aaron. We could both talk your ears off about it. But the long and short of it is that balanced XLR is much like a power outlet. It's got a hot and a negative and a ground. It doesn't have a left hot and a right hot and a ground. That would be a stereo signal. That would be a TRS unbalanced signal. Hot left, hot right, ground. And then the balanced XLR would be hot, negative, ground. All the same signal, but it flips the phase on it to where it gets rid of noise. So 2 completely different things. If you start trying to cross them over each other, I promise you bad things are going to happen. And I just had a tech call about somebody using a broadcast board with the Rodecaster Pro and the Rodecaster Pro comes out balanced 1/4 inch, and they're plugging it in unbalanced RCA mono. Whew. And Aaron's shaking his head. Yeah, he's seen this. Yeah, it's a nightmare. And so we had to figure out how to balance it and correct it. And that's what DIs are typically for, or a bunch of different conversations there. So not today's conversation, but plenty to talk about as you guys progress in this stuff. But what we need to talk about then is the equipment for phones. And then I'm just going to jump ahead for a second since we talked all about that. Adapters, storage, monitoring, but adapters. It's huge. And that goes into all the professional stuff too. But let's talk about the gear real fast. The equipment for this is going to be our VideoMic Me was the first one that we came out with. It's a TRRS 1/8 inch plug. What happened? Any iPhone users out there? That's right. Me too.
Everybody.
What happened after the 6 or the 7?
7.
They
Was it
took
the 7?
out. Yeah, they took the headphone port out.
It gone. TRRS went away, and we all over here at Rode just went, oh, crud. Because we literally created that microphone like 6 months before they switched it over to Lightning port. So eventually we came out with the VideoMic Me L, Lightning port straight in to the phone. The phone then becomes your audio interface and does the conversion and different things like that. So again, there's still an audio interface here. What you need to know about the phone is that it's default. It kind of like Apple just says, because my parents have iPhones, they don't know what the heck they're doing as far as like audio, you know, and that's because they're not audio people. So they just want to plug it in and have it work. If you buy a third-party app, something like Filmic Pro, I use for video a lot, or you just like the voice memo thing or whatever, there's very different setup things that you have to do to customize it. But like Filmic Pro allows you to turn the audio up and down so you can adjust it. The Rode Reporter app allows you to adjust it. But again, it goes back to making sure you have the proper port and that it can plug into your device, and then you can customize said device, especially as a pro. The final one is USB, right? Everything's going to USB-C. So we don't have a VideoMic Me C yet. I'm sure it's coming because we did the same thing with the Lightning port. But the VideoMic NTG I'm using right now has that USB port out, and we just released the SC15, which allows you to go straight from USB-C to Lightning. And it doesn't even matter to you all, but you have to pay Apple to be able to do that. So that's another reason why you can't just buy a USB-C to Lightning cable and call it good. It's probably not going to work. And Apple makes sure of that because they make their own cables and they don't want you competing with them. So you pay them some money and they let you do it.
That's one of the differences between Thunderbolt 3 on Apple and USB-C.
Bam.
It's made by Intel, but if they call it Thunderbolt, they have to pay Apple. If they want to just take the money for themselves, they call it USB-C. Same connection, same pin, same everything. It's just a licensing thing.
It's funny that it's just a chip inside of it. So literally, if you want to make it for Apple, you got to have a chip inside your cable that says you can be used with an iPhone 10. And so, yeah, it's crucial. And I always teach people that, you know, if you're going to buy like an adapter into your computer, you know, and you have an Apple, like go buy Apple. I know it's going to cost you more right now, but it's also a lot cheaper than buying 14 of the same devices again and again and again, because they, you know, and that's the thing. Like I have a charger in the living room that just like I plug into every once in a while, and often I'll do an update or something, and then it's like, this is not compatible. You know, so it's like one of those stupid $5 cables. It works every once in a while. It doesn't work all the time. If you're doing video and professional audio, please don't depend on that cable. Go buy the Apple device and use it accordingly, right? The $40 versus $15 seems like a lot today. I promise you it's not a lot overall. Cool. All right. Back to, I told you that we could jump into just, it's funny that mobile devices are really what this, the problem this has created, because it does so much so easily that people don't know what goes into it, you know?
Right. But it's putting into the consumer's hand, not even the prosumer's hand. It's putting in the consumer's hand a whole bunch of tools that they expect it to work, to be plug and play. But now you actually have to put some thought into it. And us from the technical world haven't always thought of things that way. To us, it's like, oh, well, it's a microphone. I'm expecting this and this and this and this and this. A consumer, it's a blank. It's just nothing. You know, it should just work, and I don't know why it doesn't work.
I was gonna comment on that too. Like going like with Apple and everything. Like I don't know if you guys have heard, but like they want to reduce their carbon footprint, you know, and so they're taking away the cubes that you get, you know, like in the box, like when you open your brand new iPhone and everything. And so what that is doing, like I'm a huge Apple fan. So like what
Nice.
that is doing is basically when you get like the new iPhone Pros and everything now, what you get is just the cable, and it's the USB-C, and it's at the other end is the Lightning, and that's it. So if you don't have a USB-C cube, then you can't use it. You have to go out and buy like the other one. And like I have like my iPad and everything, and I wanted to like put an actual headphone jack into it, and it's a USB-C, you know, like I can only insert that. And so like, you know, there's the dongle problem, you know, and you know that, you
The
know,
dongle problem is a great way to say that. Oh my gosh.
so,
If
yeah, you can start using it.
the
But
dongle
yeah.
problem, it's a real thing. I just had a guy who wants to vlog, and like I just don't want a dongle anymore. And it's like, Rode didn't create the dongle problem. I'm
Yeah,
stealing that.
exactly. And then I was like, okay, so literally like what, like how, I don't know how long USB-C has been out for, but at least Apple, I don't know how long they've introduced that for, like several years now, you know? And like, as, you know, MacBook users, you know, and now that they're taking the cube away, you know, that's one problem. So we're gonna go to the third party people, and then, you know, the dongle problem, and then, you know, like just like as you were saying, you know, like the other stuff too. But I mean, they've got to like step it up, because like all these other third parties, you know, they're gonna get to them, and then, you know, Apple's gonna be like, so now we're releasing this, and it's like, yeah, you're way behind it. So like,
So I got a
just-
question for you that I haven't learned yet, and maybe you, in some of that research that you've done, I'm curious if you know. To me, I'm going to sound also pessimistic and a little, a little industry downer here for a second, but I just thought it was a money thing, you know, and
yeah.
I thought they were getting rid of the box just so you had to go buy the box, you know, but
Yeah.
do you know why that would be like a carbon emission thing? Is it just less
So
manufacturing equals lower carbon footprint?
So they said that they're gonna like stop. They were like, yeah, they had this big Apple event, you know, and everything. They had three different ones this year, like four or whatever. And
Mhm.
basically, they went like they took this drone footage of like and this lady's like at the top of the Apple like park or whatever, and there's a bunch of what is it? What are those things called? Like green, not. What do you get like when it's using by the sun and everything? I can't-
Solar panels.
Solar panels, yes,
Oh.
yeah, solar panels.
Mhm.
And she's like,
I thought that's where you were going.
yeah, it's just like sitting on top of the building. It's like so random. She's like, so to reduce our carbon footprint and everything, we're gonna, you know, get rid of the cubes and all that, and start switching over to, you know, just the cords, because the cubes are the problem. The cubes are the things that last the longest out of like, you know, all of Apple's products, I feel like.
I agree. Yeah, that's why it's
yeah.
like I don't know if that's necessarily true to get rid of the
Yeah. And
you
then
know.
I was like, what? And I was like, you know, because, you know, they introduced the like, you can have your phone, you can set it, you know, on something and it charges like that, but then you can't really use it and pick it up. Like the
Q
wireless
charging or what?
the wireless charging.
Yeah, but the problem with the wireless charger is it halves your battery life,
Yeah.
because wireless charging isn't as efficient, and there is a positive and negative with wireless charging. So you're cutting back your battery life if you're constantly using it that way.
And like going off of that, like the cubes, I think they said it's because like they don't get when people throw them out or something like that. And I don't know. You'll have to like look it up.
Who
but it
throws them
was-
out? Like I have like 50.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you can throw that. I've thrown like, I mean, like I've dropped it so many times, it works. But
I
like
throw
it-
cables away a million times more.
Right,
You know, 'cause
oh,
that's
yeah,
what you're
yeah.
tending to
I think
damage
that
too.
the real footprint issue would be the cables, because
Yeah.
that just becomes a waste.
Yeah, and I was like,
Maybe it
okay,
is a money thing after all.
Yeah, and then she goes, the lady goes like, yeah, you know, like so, and then she goes like really quickly. She says this, but this isn't also like we're gonna reduce like the 300 million. Like there's over 300 million people using our products, and this doesn't include third-party users. And then she skips over, like just moves on real quickly. But it's insane, you know, like it's like you know, because they haven't, you know, introduced this other stuff, and it's kind of like we want this, and there's like so many creators, you know, like making products, and then like they have the Apple wallets now, and like you can magnet it onto the iPhone 12, and I was like, that's literally just like a wallet, like with a sticky side on it, but yet you're gonna sell it for like $50 or $100. I was like, that's already a thing, and like
I'd probably say, leaning more over to Ryan's point of view, I'm sure the Cube just has to do just as much with the monetary thing,
yeah,
where they were just giving it away, and then but everybody else, all their competitors are selling it.
Mhm.
So why give it away? Let's just cut the cost. Everybody else is already making it and making money off of it. Let's not waste money off of it.
Yeah,
And,
somebody did the math.
yeah, and then let's call it an ecology thing, and that's fine. Cool, whatever.
yeah.
But
Well, and the truth is that less manufacturing does equal a lower carbon footprint, but
Yep.
that's a
Yep.
lie by omission, essentially, by saying like, well, and everybody's guilty of it. People in general, just talking on a daily basis, are guilty of it. It's no different for a company, as long as you don't blatantly lie about something that is just not true, you know. And so, yeah, it's true that it'll lower the carbon footprint, but
Yeah.
I feel like there's a better carbon footprint thing that you could do. But
Yeah.
it's cool if you also save some money at the same time. We're not mad at you
Mhm.
for being more efficient, Apple. You know, that's one of the reasons we love you, is you're efficient. But I love that tangent. That was a great conversation. Whole new topic on all of it as well. But it really does talk about like how manufacturers have to customize their stuff to basically deal with the 5 phone companies, you know, or I don't know how many phone companies, right? You got Apple and LG, and I don't even know like what falls under, but like we narrow it down to, does it work for Android and does it work for Apple, right? And so the TRRS is still pretty viable in all of the Android space. I do get the call every once in a while that it's the mad person that they can't plug their microphone into their device, and it's like, unfortunately, I can't cater to every single device. You got to do your pre-production to find out what you need and how you need to set it up. I'm here to help you find that solution, but I'm sorry if you bought it beforehand and didn't do your research. I can't really rewind time. So, you know, and I try to say that as respectfully as possible, and they're just frustrated, you know, and I get it because I'm still frustrated and I know what I'm talking about with half of this stuff. And I'm just going to say half because it changes every day. So I'm still learning as well. You know, so you got to know what you're going to plug it into and why and how you can customize it once it's there. And that goes into, we're basically talking about all the technical stuff before we get to technical, but lavaliers exist inside of Rode. SmartLav Plus is the one. It started out as a SmartLav. We upgraded the capsule. Now it's the Plus. You'll notice that pin set, TRRS. Going to get to that in just a second, but that's an option inside of Rode as well. You can also take the Wireless Go and adapt it over to a 4-pin and it will work. More on that in a second. Audio interfaces is the next thing, right? We do have gear inside of this space. We have the SC6, which is a standard TRRS, not pictured right now. The SC6L, which is a Lightning port. It's actually the converter. Instead of the phone, it's actually got a converter inside of it, running the signal from analog to digital so the phone can understand it. $75 though, instead of say $25. So for an interface, it's not very expensive, but for a little phone adapter, people kind of go, what? You know, and then the one next to it, go ahead.
And this gets back into the same question from Jack of what's going to be better, a dedicated external audio interface or the converters inside of your phone, where there's so many things happening in there versus here's a dedicated that's going to have more gain, more better noise floor, and more versatility to it also.
It's absolutely true. And inside of the phone, it's not as easy. That's the downside. So much. Remember earlier I was talking about the hardware, then the operating system, then the software. It's still true for your phone. Your phone is a small computer. It's doing the exact same situation as an audio interface. And you're taking an analog microphone. In the case of the SmartLav Plus, you know, that's an analog microphone. That's just 4 pins running a voltage, just like our other microphones. The audio interfaces here are going to take whatever that is, XLR on the right-hand side for the IXLR, and it is just Lightning port, so it is just the iPhone. And then the other one is just the iPhone. And the reason they do that is because Android changes every single day with 50,000 different manufacturers. Apple stays the same as Apple. And so they pay the money for Apple and they make the converters for the Apple devices. And then you can take any one of the analog microphones and still use them with an Android if you get like our Video Micro or like a standard like shoe mount, what's called a shoe mount that goes on top of your camera. Those are just wired microphones. So then you just find the right adapter and you can plug it into your Android. So we don't cater to Android as much, but only because you have more options with Android. Apple, you don't have any options. They make what they make and you got to make it work with that. So we have those Lightning ports and they'll convert over and they will increase your quality a little bit because Rode is focusing on the sound card, not the sound card, but the actual conversion. Is it as good as any of the pro companies? Like Apogee does an amazing job now they create microphones and converters, but they were known for converters and they make really good converters at a pretty decent price for what they do. So are they going to be that? No. But will you be able to notice? Heck no. And especially in the phone situation, like we're talking about quick, easy solutions, not audiophile style audio, right? So audio interfaces are still available to you. Find out what it is, where it's going, why it's going there, and you'll be fine. So on that note, functionality is going to be talking about first and foremost adapters. So does anybody know what TRRS stands for? Aaron already told us what TRS was. Does anybody know what TRRS stands for? Or have you even heard of it?
I don't think so. No.
Cable, right? Have you guys seen that cable? If you say no, you're lying to me, even if you didn't know it.
Maybe.
Maybe. Anybody got any Apple earbuds? Earbuds, not AirPods. Yeah, are you using them right now? Oh, you got the Lightning. You got the Lightning version.
Yeah, it's a Lightning one. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody got the original? Nope, Lightning. Okay, so everything's moved to Lightning, but the original day one, I think I have them over here.
I do. If you need me
Oh,
to
actually, I do. I actually bought these at the store the other day, like with the regular.
Exactly. These are what used to come with your iPhone. It's not going to be in focus, but that's a 4-pin.
hand trick.
That's right. Oh, hey, smart. This is I'm not the video guy.
The other way around.
Oh.
Put it in front of the hand.
I don't think it's on autofocus, actually, now that I think about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Lumix is not good for autofocus either, which is something I'm learning from my video friends. So, hey, Jack, you've done some video, haven't you? You sound like you have.
Yeah, I'm all I do is shoot video basically every day.
I'm considering the new A7C. So is it A7C?
It's like the A7 or it's like the A7 III, but the more compact version.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's got all the features of all the other ones, and it's more affordable than.
It's all the features of the A7 III. Yeah, but it's not the same as like the A7S III or the R3 or R4.
Exactly, but it's also not $3,500.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I've been using my A7 III, and it does everything incredible. So
perfect.
Yeah.
So sorry, everybody. That's to say the video side of this. The Rode deals with a lot. I'm learning so much about video too, but the Lumix is very much known for not being good autofocus. So I've left it off just to keep me in focus. Where were we? Yeah.
Talking about these guys.
Yep, that's right. So that I do have the old earbuds and I do have the new Lightning port earbuds. And then obviously Bluetooth is a different conversation, but the old ones they were TRRS. So funny enough, it still stands for tip, ring, sleeve. It doesn't have anything to do with anything other than it tells you that it's the tip, the ring, and the sleeve. Does anybody have a guess as to what the other ring might be connecting?
No.
Don't overthink it. Look at your earbuds.
Okay. Is it
What devices do we have on the earbuds?
what devices?
Yep.
Oh, is it has to do with the
Yes, sir.
plus minus?
It's the microphone. It's actually not to do with the set. I've looked up a little bit about the controls, and that is a whole different beast that changes a lot of, I think it was voltage, if I remember correctly. Irrelevant. It's the microphone. So
Okay.
the phone is a bidirectional piece of gear. When I plug something into it, the phone companies decided they don't want two holes doing two jobs. They wanted one hole doing both jobs. So they created a pin that literally allows for a microphone signal to go in and the headphones to come out, and they all share a ground. Everybody good?
Mhm.
That's it. Super simple. But it goes through the same jack. So honestly, I always joke that like audio, I apologize really for audio cables and adapters and stuff. Here's just a headphone adapter. Like this stuff hasn't changed since like World War II, you know? And if you think, if any instrument, any musicians out there, you know, a guitar cable looks like a speaker cable. XLR cables can be used for millions of different things, especially now. They all use the same adapters and connectors since like World War II when it was all developed, World War I, World War II. So the headphone jack, which is what it used to be just your standard headphone connector. And that was TRS. So all they had to change was make it 4 pins instead of 3 pins. And so now you got a microphone that goes into the bidirectional input and a headphone signal that goes out. That's it. It's super simple when you really just break it down into that concept. It gets convoluted once again once you start talking about splitting it out. If anybody owns some gaming headphones that has the microphone on it, and then they give you 2 jacks out of the headphones, get that call often too. Now you physically have headphones and you physically have a microphone, and you have to divide it as such or you'll get lost. And so many beginners call me because of that, right? So back into here, let's take the Lavalier Go was the microphone that we created for the wireless Go. If you remember, you could plug in an external microphone. Well, if you buy the SmartLav Plus, that's a 4-pin microphone. Can you plug that into the 3-prong input of a wireless Go and make it work?
No.
That is a good answer. It will short out the pins and not work. If you do it the opposite direction or either direction, long story short, you're just shorting out pins, and that's always bad, always and forever. So if you take the Lavalier Go and put what's called the SC4 on it into your 4-pin Apple dongle, you connected that microphone successfully. If you ever break it up in a different way, it may not work. And I still have to say it depends. Because think about it this way. If I have a SmartLav Plus, which is 4-pin, and I need to get over to an external recorder, which accepts 3-pin, there's 2 ways you can do that. One is to convert the 4-pin to 3-pin immediately, or you can run it 4-pin all the way until the end and convert it to 3-pin at the end. If at any point you convert that incorrectly, it will not work. Does that make sense? This is why I get so many calls about this. Not only that, Apple is horrible at telling you that that's a 4-pin adapter. Everybody else is bad about it too. So unfortunately, you really can't figure it out. Let me sum it up for you. In general, for the industry that we work in today, and with what the phone companies have determined as their standards, it will change tomorrow, I'm sure, but smart devices, iPads, iPhones, laptops, Android phones, Windows tablets, they are TRRS. They are using one port to do both jobs. Cool? That's why you need 4 pins, because it's doing both jobs. As far as 3-pin, that's going to be your external recorders and your cameras, your DSLR cameras and so forth. Everybody good? So that Sony behind you there is definitely a 3-pin, unless you have the hot shoe mount and you can plug it in XLR, right?
Yeah, it's got this 3 pins. I was just looking at that to see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good luck looking up in the Sony manual and finding that it says TRS. It won't say it. And I
Never
hate
tried.
it. As the audio guy, I hate it, because then your customer comes back and says, well, it didn't say that. And it's like, I know, but plug it in and see if it works. I did this test when Aaron and I were testing the class, you know, it's just, You guys should all hear just a weird like, right? I do that for every device I test. If I plug a microphone into my phone, I do that scratch test. That's so, you get too many beginners who are going to go check 1 2, check 1 2, and the microphone inside this phone still works if I connect it improperly. Right. So if I'm using
I've done that
Bluetooth
before.
out, yeah, we have all
I
done
think
it. I
it
still
works.
do it.
Yeah.
I still do it. Yeah. Or maybe it disconnects and you just don't know. So that's unfortunate, but there's nothing you can do about that. But on setup, if you just like lightly rub the capsule, it guarantees that you're hearing that device because nothing else can pick that up. So keep that in mind. So when you're converting these things, keep them the same. Rode does a nice job of actually color coding them, black for 3-pin, gray for 4-pin. And so we also have the SC3, which runs 4-pin over to 3-pin. And you have to make sure those all go correctly. Both. So I always find out where I start and then where I'm going, and I adapt it accordingly. And if you stay in that realm, you'll be fine. Everybody cool?
Yeah.
So the other downside to phones, mobile, and we're in functionality and what was it called? It was limitations, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So functionality and limitations. So I'm just sticking with the limitations. Functionality, you guys have kind of already learned, right? How to connect it is definitely something that you got to work on with functionality, but the phone is going to create limitations, and that's twofold. Storage. How many people have their photos cranked on their phones? How many people have their music overloaded on their phones? All of those things are going to add to the storage being full. And you're going to be halfway through a shoot and then run out of storage. Right. Good news is audio is not very heavy on the storage. Video is very heavy. So you got to keep that in mind too. Video is going to kill your storage way faster than just audio. And last but not least is monitoring. So let's talk about like if I have my phone, I've done this a lot for just YouTube videos or whatever. So I got one of my interfaces and I just put this phone in the Talon's pocket. Or let's say it's the SmartLav Plus. I just plug it in to the dongle and that's it. I got a wire running up the shirt. Now I've basically turned it into that Tascam recorder you were showing me earlier. But it's my phone. Well, if that's my recorder, I also don't have the ability to look at the levels, and the same for your Tascam, right? It's got the meters on it. You got to set the level and your gain. So going back to the stuff we talked about in podcasting, what is very bad about that?
About not be able to check your levels.
Yep.
That you don't know if someone's clipping or not.
Exactly. So you
Or
get
in my
somebody
case, like the Tascam has an auto leveler that works pretty well. But
that is
my
nice.
problem,
Yeah.
Yeah, it pretty much always works. And I also do like a second file at -6 or 12 dB as a backup, just in case it does clip. But then my problem is checking it to see if I'm having too much wind or not.
Right.
That's,
Right. Yeah.
That's been my struggle recently.
Well, so that is a great segue. The monitoring does not necessarily just mean levels, like just the meters, right? That is obviously a crucial part of it. And the downside is your only solution is really just to test it beforehand. Pay attention to your talent, right? So I was doing a YouTube video for a bongo player. It wasn't bongo, but it was a very Brazilian instrument that I can't think of the name of right now. But he was going to do a tutorial, right? And it was an advertisement for his band. And, so for a second he might be playing the bongo, and then for another second he'd be talking, right? And then my job in post was just to edit. I had a mic on the bongo, and I had the lavalier into the phone on to his dialogue, and then I was just crossfading him. But let's say that person then gets excited about what they're talking about, and they start talking louder, or they laugh, or they scream, or they then all of a sudden I clip or I distort. That audio is bad, right? And if you don't set up the proper staging, the biggest issue with stuff like this is usually that people don't talk in testing the same way as they talk in performance. They either do one of two things: get way quieter or get way louder. And so you have to customize again and until they're comfortable. And when you don't have the ability to just turn a knob down on the back of your microphone, you got to chase it. So it's bad. Not only that, you can't hear it. I couldn't plug in a headphone, run the cable over to me from their pocket.
Yeah,
So,
that's my struggle. Is like what I do sometimes is I like will do a test run and I'll just be standing next to them listening with my
Right.
headphones. But then
Exactly.
eventually I have to stand back, because I can't
Right.
be in the shot or anything.
You got
So,
it. So keep in mind that it's very easy to do audio with a phone. It's very convenient. That's one of the biggest things about why people do it. It's right there in your pocket. It's become pretty much everybody's DSLR camera, and they've gotten really good at it. There are 4K cameras on these things now. So, I mean, you can do some work, but they all come with limitations, whether it's as a camera in things like ISO settings and shutter speed settings and various things like that, to audio settings where you just being able to turn the microphone up or down. And the only downside really to a fixed limiter in some of these devices is that they're not very good. So going back to what we were talking about with like preamps in a DSLR camera, if you just compress the snot out of it, which if you don't know, a limiter is just a more exaggerated compressor. If that's why I also tell everybody to turn it down. Let's see how far from this menu I am. I could have done this before. Sorry about that. I forget that I have a switcher now, so I can actually do this. So manual and auto in a camera is literally just that. It's a compressor, and it's a bad one because it squashes everything loud and it cranks everything quiet up.
yeah, I would never use that.
You got
That's
it, man.
frightening. That's
That's
frightening.
the first thing I tell everybody to turn down or turn off. And so Tascam is obviously going to do a way better job of that. But even then, I look at the settings. Tascam will usually be pro enough to include that in their manuals, right? And you can confirm or deny that as far as your Tascam is concerned. But if I get a limiter that basically like brick walls at -1 dBFS, which is digital, like at the top of that digital, but then it cranks it down by like 30 decibels, that could be good for those instances where it's just like, I don't know why somebody did that, but going back to a podcast, like I know a buddy of mine who uses those Tascams for that. And that's all it does is it doesn't really, and again, I don't know enough about it, but it doesn't seem to be super aggressive until the top of the signal, right? So you can set good levels below that limiter. But you said that you might have the customization where you can set to -6 or -12 or -16.
Yeah, I think it's -12. You do a second channel running at that minus dB.
Yeah.
And I'm looking now. I do have the limiter on and the auto leveler. So I don't really.
You have it on
know.
leveler. So a leveler,
Yeah.
depending on the technology behind it, could be better. But that doesn't necessarily. A lot of levelers have a limiter on top of them. So leveler is what usually distinguishes. And this is just me talking about Aphex. And the stuff that I've been trained on with Aphex is their levelers are a compressor. They're not a limiter. But what they have in them is a look ahead signal. So what goes into it has quite a few millisecond look at the signal, and then it averages it really quickly so that the compressor reacts to the average of the signal, not the set peaks like a compressor does. And then finally they have a limiter on the box that you can turn on. So you can say, okay, now I also want to take the top loud parts of the signal and squash the snot out of it if it gets there. And a lot of radio broadcasts use that in case something that they're sent from another company is poorly mastered or mixed. It's just taking those really sharp, loud parts and just cranking them down. But a leveler is going to do a nice averaging of the same time. Aaron, anything to add on that, man? I know.
No,
And
that's good.
we're getting way past the people that are beginners on this, so I apologize to y'all too, but something you'll learn later. Aaron, do you have anything to add on that, man?
No.
All right, cool. So that's good stuff. And inside, what I was talking about there is like if you have software that allows you to limit, you would also want to just make sure it's not going to do what that camera did, which is auto level and just kill all of your louder parts and turn up all of your quieter parts. And you got to make sure the leveling, the metering and the monitoring is done prior to, and then you got to go back and check. And you got to make sure it's okay. So if you have the ability to customize it, one of the things that Rode came out with that we no longer have it because Isotope is the ones that created it for us, was Rode Rec, and Rec just stood for record. And it was a program software powered by Isotope. We weren't a software developer at the time, so they created it for us, and they put some of their algorithms into it. So they had what was called mild compression, hard compression, simple basic setup. They had limiter, soft limiter, hard limiter, and you would just go in and you could choose one of them. And I always put it on mild compression because it gave me a little bit more headroom to work with, but it didn't squash the snot out of it, right? I didn't want it to just, everything is cranked down and everything quiet is turned up. It just wanted a nice average to control it more, but it gave me more room to mess up if somebody that was talking into my phone was very dynamic. They were talking this moment, whispering that moment, screaming the next moment. And I still had to check afterwards, even with that mild compression, since I didn't do it hard. I'd still have to go back and double check that the audio is good. And if you don't, you're going to probably find out in editing that you messed up. That's a bad place to find out you messed up.
I love finding out I messed up in the editing.
Oh, it's the best.
My favorite. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And talking about messes up and Isotope, all of you should go to Isotope's website this weekend.
Please do.
They are having a crazy holiday plugin package. They are selling $1,200 worth of plugins for $50. And part of it is their RX Elements package bundle, which is all the noise reduction and repair tools, the quick down and dirty versions of them. And on top of that, you have award-winning reverb plugins that they're just including in that bundle. That I bought them 8 years ago, 7 years ago for about $300 each, and there's 3 of them. And now that I could have just bought it for $50, all of it. And there's a whole bunch of good tools there. Some of them are more to the music production, but the majority of them, you guys can use it for video and repair and stuff. And for $50, that's just crazy to me.
IZOTPE. Awesome company, good guys. I love working with them. And for my video stuff especially, I use it every time.
What program do you use as plugins in?
RX. So I use full RX, which is going to cost you, $1,500 full price for just the video editing stuff. But the plugins I use are just the denoise first and foremost. Even when you work with gain structure and get good gain structure, you still have noise floor. And I just find that Isotope takes that little extra step. Now I record it well, I hope, right? That's all you can do is just try to get the best you can. And then the elements might mess with you a little bit, but even when I record it well, to clean it up, that one final little touch, that one extra bump above to create professionalism. I love denoising just for that reason. De-reverb's a good one, but it's one of those where if you overdo it, it can really, really, really start sounding robotic. But Trent, now because you asked me, I'm escaping. It's not coming to my brain. One thing from the music space that I like inside of RX is a new thing they call vocal balance, I think, or music balance or something like that. And you can literally take a
Isotope?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's their competition to Vocaline. So it's Vocal Match.
Vocal
It's a
Match.
dialogue matching. So it's crazy because they put their algorithms that they developed for music, and they take a voice that was recorded on scene in the acoustic space that it is, with the microphone, with the distance that it is, and then you take the voice on the that they did in the studio for the ADR that is in a nice, clean, controlled environment, no room tone, and it extracts the room tone from the scene one and puts it onto the ADR so that the ADR now sounds like if it was done in that space.
Exactly.
Which is
just a
incredible.
million tools. Yeah, just a million tools. One of the other ones that I was talking about is you can literally take a lead vocalist out of a track. It's very hard to do. It depends on the processing that's in it, but you can literally turn down like the background vocals of a song to create like a karaoke track off of the real deal. It's amazing what they're doing over there, but they're known for anything from correction up to mastering, and they have a lot of mastering stuff too, but go check them out. Powerful stuff. But they were doing that, and they gave us that processing, which is kind of huge for making a phone work a little bit better. So to finish this up, and we're going to get into the Q&A, look at your adapters. Got to make sure, like, before you do your shoot or your audio recording, you just got to go check how much storage you have available to you. And there are a million apps out there or a million websites that you can go to mathematically figure out at what recording rate you can like how much storage you need to actually record for say 30 minutes to an hour or whatever. I just put setup and pre-production on this. We've already talked about it, but doing those things prior to the shot is really gonna be the driving force on whether your podcast is good, whether you use a wireless microphone well, or whether a phone is going to be able to do a professional job for you. Just pre-production goes to all of those things beforehand, but it's another thing where it's just important here. And then just check always, even just like the wireless microphones, you always got to make sure that you have power. And it's really good that you can have a lot of different power banks and things like that. But think about that USB-C, that lightning port. It's also your charger, isn't it? Another limitation. So you better have a full battery, right? And all of those things are really going to be crucial to what you do here and whether you succeed at it. So this is a bonus. This goes for everything that we've already talked about, but always remember your accessories. Good news is we already talked about windjammers and blimps, right? It knocks down the energy of the wind. If you're going outside, a furry windjammer is very crucial because it does add that extra layer of protection against the wind. Boom poles are the solution for what I was talking about with my mantra of get the microphone closer. And then cables is just a very dumbed down version of proper adapters. How far can you run the cable? All of those things are crucial to, I literally have a box of adapters and cables that allow me to, when I walk into a place that I'm helping them do audio, when they say, oh, I got to plug that thing into that thing, I have a freaking tackle box of adapters to make that work. And if you don't have those things, you're either going to have to go buy them, and that might back up your production, or it might just be something that you can't do at all. So having things like that is crucial to succeeding in all this stuff. So
this is my tackle bag.
There it is.
That's literally inside my bag, and this is whole sorts of computer cables, USB cables, audio connectors, audio adapters, and that's in my backpack all the time. And then in the trunk of my car, there's another bag with other audio stuff.
Bigger, larger,
Yes, just in case.
That's right.
Because it helps.
Great. So that is all I have, everybody. What questions do we have?
Oh, I have a question. I've got several. Let me see. I'm going through my notes. Let's see. Okay, so for the apps and everything, for like the recording apps you mentioned, for like mobile devices, you said Filmit Pro app,
Yep.
and then Rode Recorder app, or what?
So there used to be Rode Rec, and now it's just called Rode Reporter. It's not nearly as intelligent. Essentially, there's a million apps out there, and yes, you do have to qualify the app for what you want it to do. But Rode decided to hang that up and go into just a very basic app called Rode Reporter. And it has certain features like that IXLR that I was showing you guys. You can actually push the button on the device. So it's like for newscasting or interviews. So like if you're a self production, like you're doing all the work, like you got to interview somebody and also record it, you got a tripod and you set it up and all that stuff, you can physically open the Rode Reporter app and with the IXLR press the button to start recording without having to go back around to your camera and hit record. So it's a way to get oh, and I'm so sorry. Like, it's not a video app, so you could have it in your pocket. Is actually what that would be like if I'm interviewing people with a handheld XLR microphone at Comic-Con again, and you can have the phone in your pocket and you don't have to pull it out and hit record and be like awkward about it. You can literally push the button and it will work in our app. But other than that, it allows you to adjust your levels, and that's pretty much it. It has good export, and so you can send it right to a website, or you can send it to a WAV file on your email, a bunch of different things like that. But qualify your apps, and Filmic Pro is the one we recommend for video because it allows a lot of customization in audio, but it also allows a lot of customization in video. And they're just another good company that we started working with, and highly recommend it.
Yeah, for sure. I'll check it out. And then like another quick question. So I have the Rode video mic, and I use it on my Canon, my mirrorless Canon.
Awesome.
And so whenever I want to plug it into, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but I want to save it till the end. So basically, like whenever I plug it into the headphone port, it recognizes it as like headphones, you know, and everything.
Right.
And I'll have the splitter and everything. How do I get it to recognize that it's a microphone and still have my headphones in use, you know? So like I can record from my MacBook.
I apologize. I missed it. You had a MacBook Pro, right?
Yeah. So like we have the MacBook Pros with the headphone, the headphone thing. And then
what's your splitter?
the splitter, I don't know what the splitter is. It's just like, I guess like an average one.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
Okay.
like
So this is a problem that I really, really, really have these days, because remember I was telling you the wireless Go could be like, if it's called the SC7. All of our smart cables that adapt to a phone or whatever, a smart device, are called an SC something. Smart Cable 7 takes 3-pin over to 4-pin, and it appropriately does it for the Rode microphones into a phone. Guess what your laptop also is? 4-pin, it should recognize it. But a computer is smarter and dumber, more dumb, all at the same time. So the analog port on those computers, long story short, we don't guarantee functionality. And I can only answer for Rode, right? Because the SC7 doesn't have that chip that Apple's looking for, and your Chinese-made accessories at $5 aren't going to have it either. And so every single MacBook that you buy, same model, same year, and all that stuff, I have 2 of them. One will work, one will not work. And so it sounds like you have one that doesn't work, because I challenge you to go find an old pair of earbuds, right? That have the TRRS connector, plug it in. Because I can take the one that doesn't work for me, and I can plug in that headset that I just showed you, and it will show external microphone and headphones. If I do that with my Rode SC7, it just sees headphones. Okay. So I assume you're going to the sound preferences in the Apple menu, right? Mm-hmm. And that's great. Thank you for doing that. Because remember I was saying that the hardware has to work with the operating system very first. So that would be the menu that you go to change the input and output. But as you're saying, every once in a while you won't see an external microphone, which means it's just using the built-in onboard microphone. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem, is that the manufacturer is essentially limiting you on what you can do. Okay. And you have to have that chip. And there's no device that I know of, short of an Apple device, and they don't create that cable. They don't have a TRS to TRRS cable that has the chip in it. I don't know why Rode hasn't created it yet, honestly, since we're already in bed with them, you know? So hopefully it'll come later, but right now it's not a guarantee. So what's the solution? USB, an audio interface, something that will actually do the conversion with the chipset, and you'll plug it in USB. So the good news is that Apple does not limit you on what USB devices you can plug in. So if you have a particular model that doesn't let you do it, you got to go get USB.
Okay. And there are, I'll have to find it later, there are USB interfaces that are pretty much the size or a little bigger than a USB data stick. Mm-hmm. Yep. That you can just go USB and plug in your headset, and then you have in and out of your headset that way, and that's it.
Okay.
So literally for like $50, you can just convert it over.
That's all. Yeah. Thank you. That really helped, because I'm like,
now be careful.
you know, like it's annoying at times. It's like
Yeah.
Mac, it's like, or just Apple. It's like, come on.
Right.
You know, it's just like
You're better than this, Apple.
Yeah, because like, you know, like I love Rode, and I got my first Rode microphone. It's my only Rode microphone. I got it last year for Christmas and everything, and it works great. And I'm like, okay, I know it works. I've tested it up, and I'm like, it's something with the computer. And so now I have like that answer, but that.
Well, and thank you. And I appreciate that too. And I do get the disgruntled customer here and there. You know, like, why didn't Rode solve this problem? You know, and everybody's working together, you know,
Yeah.
and it's not just Rode, it's not just Apple, it's not just Android, it's not just Windows.
Mhm.
I cannot, me being Rode at this particular moment, same thing is if you hire me to do the sound for you and you don't tell me a device that you have, or you tell me incorrectly, and then I get there and the sound doesn't work, it's like, well, now I have to solve a new problem that didn't exist beforehand, right? And so the same thing with Apple and so forth. And like I said, because we do have devices that do work with Apple legitimately, now it could be that a cable at that price point doesn't have the chip because it might cost more to put the chip in it, and it would cost, you couldn't sell that cable. You'd basically be buying like a $50 cable, and it's like, then I have that customer who's like mad because it's a $50 cable. It's like, well, you asked for it. You know, so it's a give and a take, and it's always dancing and balancing. Rode and other companies already have affordable stuff in that space. And you know, as well as I do, just like we talked about with the little boxes for Apple, it's always going to come down to two, is it going to put us out of business if we make these things for you? Maybe. And I'm sure we wouldn't go out of business because of a cable, but businesses also don't like to create a product that's just going to like waste away. And then half our customers aren't going to buy it because it's too expensive, or on and on and on. It's a give and a take, and we all got to work together. You got to make sure the hardware works. You got to make sure the operating system works, and you got to make sure the software is happy about it too. And so it's always, and I get those calls often. So good questions.
Sweet, thank you.
What else?
Anybody else?
You got any more?
Just to clarify or a reminder, when we were talking earlier about the mic placing on outdoor windy conditions, you mentioned, I just want to make sure I remember correctly, the gaff tape. You said
Yep.
the Rode has some kind of dead cats for lavalier mics.
We do.
Was
Yeah.
there-
Shoot me an email.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Where's the email going to be at? Where can I get your email?
I just flashed it for a second there, but you probably didn't see it, but I'll
did
show
it.
it here in just a sec.
Okay, cool. And then wasn't there a third thing that you mentioned that you can also use? The what?
Doing the triangle with the gaff tape.
No, there's another thing. I thought, was there something else you mentioned? Or was it just those two things?
Oh, the Invisilab.
Yeah.
The Invisilab. And now remember that none of these are necessarily, you don't have to do necessarily all three. Of course, every step that you do would be better than the previous. It's like a stair step of good, better, best. But no, you don't have to get the Invisilab and then behind a shirt and then gaff tape it. And
well, I might. I mean, it's seriously crazy windy out here. It is crazy windy. Yeah, and a lot of these times, you know, I'm recording farmers and they're demonstrating things and they want to be able to move around.
Yeah.
You know, and it's windy as crap. And
yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
Sometimes it's like, okay, either I get the wind noise or I have to keep them still where the wind is directly hitting their back.
Right. If I were you, I would take the approach of a windjammer with gaffer's tape. Look up that triangle method. If you can't find it, again, email me and I'll describe it. But also I'll see if I can find something, because that's where I learned it, was just the internet. And, and actually industry pros that I've dealt with too. But the goal of that gaffer's tape is essentially what the Invisilab is, which is put it into a closed environment that doesn't move. You know. And I only pitch the windjammer into the gaffer's tape because it doesn't necessarily block the wind. Just really depends on the placement. And obviously, you don't want to gaff tape over the capsule because then you get a muffled tone and also possibly noise from just, you know, putting tape on a capsule. So it's kind of opened up on the backside. So I put the furry windjammer there, then I gaff tape the body with it encapsulated around it, and then I'll tack that onto the chest, you know. And that can be
wait. Okay, I'm sorry. So you have here's the lav mic, and then you put the lav mic you say you put the Windjammer on it and then the
gaff tape.
gaff tape, or if
Yep.
let's say I have the Invisilav, could you use all three of those
The
simultaneously?
downside to the Invisilav is it actually only allows room for the lavalier mic without even having the foam Windjammer on it. So I would try if you go with the Invisilav, you would just tuck the Invisilav, like the microphone, into the rubber grommet that is the Invisilav, and it's rubber, so there's no, it kind of is its own Windjammer. But let's say it's so windy,
Okay.
and the directionality of your mic placement allows for wind to somehow come down that chamber, then you would have to put a Windjammer on it. You just have to.
Okay.
So what you do is push the microphone up to where it's poking out of the top, throw the foam onto that, and then tack it to the person.
Okay.
And shoot me an email. We can geek out a little bit more about that.
Cool. And you
Cool.
sell Rode sells all those pieces except for the gaff tape.
The Yep, exactly. The Invisilav. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Cool.
Go to Parts Express to get good cheap gaff tape.
Where?
PartsExpress.com.
What's it? Partsexpress.com.
Parts Express. Yep. And
Yeah.
here's my email, everybody. I don't know, depending
Okay.
on which version of Zoom you're looking at right now, you may or may not see that. But now that I'm talking, it should have primaried
I
over
see it.
me.
It's good.
So ryan.white@rode.com. We haven't really talked about this too much, but we do have an EDU discount. It is not set in percentage. It's we're a small company and we only have a couple channels before we're actually back in Rode Australia, right? So I say that to say that it depends on the mic. We determine our prices. We don't have to share that a lot of places. So one microphone might cost more to make, so therefore you get a smaller discount. Some microphones might be, we're trying to make them inexpensive, like the $99 pod mic, and depending on how much room we have for that is what you get it for. And typically it's like, just a little bit of like cost plus 5% or something like that, just to do business. And I've never had a person disappointed with the discount, and I've never been disappointed with what they showed, even on some of our, more expensive to build microphones, like USB microphones and things like that. So directly email me and I will fill out the form for you, check if they're in stock, and then you would submit that to our accommodation program. And it's dependent on stock and things like that, and I'll get you the prices and all that stuff. But email me directly and I will be able to help you out with any of those mics you may need. Or I don't think the accessories are on it, just heads up on like the Invisilav and stuff like that. But
Yeah. I really want. I've got my eyes on the NTG5, and and then also I would like to get the Rode Go, the whatever it's called, the
Wireless Go.
wireless Go. Yeah. Not to
Yeah.
use so much professionally, but just in those situations where it's like you need a quick solution, that just seems so convenient.
Exactly.
But I really want to get into that booming game as a
Yes.
solid backup, because right now my only real backup to the lav is what's on top of my camera, which, as we talked about, 3-5 feet away isn't ideal. So
Perfect. Exactly. You're exactly right. And then the Tascam is great, but it's the same thing. You're running that same problem we talked about with the phones, where it's setting levels and you're away from the microphone, so you can't adjust it and things like that too. So having a wireless
terrifying.
microphone that can run. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So it's a give and a take.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just email you once I'm ready to get the NTG5. Just email you for educational discount.
And I will give that disclaimer. That's a good segue into COVID has killed everybody. We are actually working 24-hour shifts these days out in Australia to manufacture. So 3 shifts to cover the 24 hours, trying to manufacture as much as humanly possible. And we're a small operation. It's like China can make 200,000, we can make 2,000. Those numbers aren't directly numbers that I know about. I'm just saying, like, we have a quality control thing. And so we don't outsource. And so that the downside to that is having more machines and being able to not bottleneck and things like that are all things that Rode works on and grows with every single day. So COVID, much like all the other companies, the first things to go were podcasting things. We ran out of Rodecaster Pros, we ran out of AI ones, we ran out of pod mics, if I didn't say that one. But then quickly after that were all the video things, people creating content, doing streams like this all day long. So our video mics were quick to follow, and the Wireless Go was fairly new as well. So it was already back ordered because of being popular. And then COVID hit, and it's like the manufacturing then also changes. So just bear with us. I will let you know if they're in or whatever, but you got a direct connection now. So, I mean, you're going to get it or find it eventually. Cool.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anybody else have any other questions? All right.
Nathan,
Well,
are
thank
you
you so
still
much.
really lost?
Yeah, but I think that's just from not being in your class yet.
Okay. All right.
Aaron, stick with him. And Nathan, like I said, man, take down that email and you can always ask. If you're looking for something specific for what you're trying to do at the stage in which you're at, email me directly and like, okay, I'm cool. I'm interested in the Wireless Go. Here's what I'm running it to. And I have enough industry experience and now video, especially if that's like your space. Podcasting, Aaron's a great source, obviously. And then I can help you specifically on how do I plug this Rode microphone into that thing and so on. So you can email me directly or hit up Aaron.
As far as gear, I have like nothing. So
well,
I'm starting from
fix that.
ground level.
Well, you know a guy now if you need it. So
I'd appreciate it.
Sorry about throwing just nerd, just extreme lingo at you all day long, but I promise you that you'll study it a couple different times and you'll never look back. And it's like that menu screen and that camera I was talking about. I teach mom and dads all the day. Mom and dads are always my example of like people that don't know how to run audio, because my parents don't know how to run audio, but it's usually like somebody who's been a photographer for 20 years. And they're just like, I want to do a little bit of video, but I'm scared, and I just tell them and I try to reassure them, you go into that menu a couple times and you're going to wonder why you ever were scared of it, so same deal.
Cool. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, guys. Well, I think that is all I got.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. You are the man. Again, always nice to talk to you, and so much information. And I think kids here, class enjoyed a lot. So I really appreciate it, dude. And
My pleasure, guys.
I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, everybody.
Cool. Thank you so much,
Have a good
Ryan.
one.
Thanks,
Bye.
Aaron. See you guys.
So guys, I'll at some point this weekend or next week, I'll post this interview on my YouTube channel, and I'll just probably put it on Facebook and send it to Roxanne so she can post it to everybody else to see it. Cool.
Cool, man.
You got my email. Anytime, I'm here for you guys.
Yeah, I want to reach out to you, Aaron. Over winter break, I'm gonna be editing a lot of audio. And so I want to just talk to you again once I start doing that and get some feedback on that. Because basically I've been shooting so many videos that it sucks, but I really haven't had time to be able to do much audio editing. So I just have to get the videos done. But I want to change that soon, hopefully.
Hey, as soon as you're ready for that conversation, let me know. Go out to chat and we can hook up if I need to do the Zoom remote control to just kind of help you with a couple of things. I can do that too. So.
Sick.
Okay.
Cool.
Oh, Jack, I saw your video you made for Phyllis's class.
No, oh my God, what? No way.
Yeah, she has that as like there's some examples. There's like several examples and everything. She switches it like every other month or something like that. Like on the assignment, the final assignment. And we watched that and everything. Like I watched that for like the homework assignment, and it was incredible. Like,
oh, dude.
Yeah, that
Thank
was
you.
so good. I mean, everything about it was just like, spot on. Like the audio, the filming. So.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you.
For sure. You're welcome.
Okay, guys. Well, take care. Enjoy your Thanksgiving week.
Cool. Oh yeah, I guess it's Thanksgiving. Dang.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks
Awesome.
again for your help.
All right. Thank you. See you guys. Thanks for the compliment. Oh my gosh. Thank you.